Here we are. We are streaming now. Here we are. Watching news. Hey guys, how you doing? Relaxing day today. Just chilling out. Eric, finger on the button, my man. Finger on the button. Good to see you. Good to see you. Today I'm having like the pondering sort of like, I feel like it's constantly the same news story, you know? That we're all just finding like new, fun, interesting ways to try to articulate like the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. What has shifted over this last week, since history started last Saturday, right? History began last Saturday, and the recalibration of reality has been to show really clearly who is a fucking Nazi and who isn't. Like, that seems to be what's actually going on in the society today, that we have found an issue that makes it really, really obvious who's a crazed lunatic, who's a clueless boob, and who is actually interested in knowing what's going on. Right? That, and then even within that spectrum, there's the people who are interested in knowing what's going on and are saying, well, we should put more consideration and thought into the idea that something, you know, that history didn't just begin last Saturday. And then there's people like me who are willing to actually say, oh, this straight up Nazism is what this is. Like, this is straight up a one-to-one parody. No mincing words, no bullshit, no beating around the bush, no spending any amount of time prefacing and hand-wringing and pearl-grabbing and saying, like, oh, well, we have to acknowledge that what has happened is that the Zionists are Nazis. They look like Nazis. They sound like Nazis. They act like Nazis. And it seems like I'm the only one willing to actually say that out loud over and over again. And that everybody else is kind of living in this place of, like, oh, you know, we gotta consider the Eric says, today my aunt told me I spew hate because I'm anti-Semitic. We here at the Canadian Commie understand that there is a distinction to be made between Israelis, Zionists, and Jews. That those are three distinct and different things that are worth talking about. That the state of Israel, which may have Israelis in it, is being run by Zionists who use something like Judaism in order to create a facade, to create a false image of their piety, their connection to their religious history, when the truth is that they don't care about any of that at all. That if they could do the same thing with Buddhism, they would. If they could do the same thing with Confucianism, they would. If they could do the same thing with Christianity, they would. That to the Zionists, Judaism is only the shield that they use in order to deflect criticism into being called anti-Semitic. It is the death of intelligence. It is a person essentially looking at you and saying outright, I am no longer going to discuss this rationally. Anti-conservative and anti-liberal. Yes, we are anti-conservative and anti-liberal here at the Canadian Commie. We are communists, right? We do not believe in liberalism. We think that it is a failed idea that ultimately leads to fascism, and we have hard evidence in front of us right now, for which we get called anti-Semitic for pointing out. Yeah, keep in mind, I only oppose Zionism. That's correct, right? We do not oppose the Israeli citizens. We do not oppose Judaism. We oppose Zionism, which puts us right in line with some of the highest level thinkers that have ever walked around. Albert Einstein was against the Zionists, right? For exactly the reasons that I am, which is that they're Nazis. Compton writes, socialism must afford me a castle or else I'm out. Okay? For serious. I mean, at this stage in the game, mate, I think I'd be happy with just the rent getting reduced, right? Like, it seems to me like the conversations that I've been having around myself is that there's a general sense of shrugging, kind of apathy and hopelessness. That people have lost faith in what's going on. People have lost faith in what's going on. Peacecraft spreads around the nonsense propaganda. The original fascists were post-socialists, like Gentile, Morel, Mussolini. Yeah, they were socialists and then they stopped being socialists and they became fascists, right? Like, they changed their mind. They walked away, right? Like, this isn't the win you think it is, my man. And are you going to watch Biden's live speech in 2 hours? Here, let's just do it for you, okay? We here in America, we believe that the sovereignty of the nation of Israel needs to be defended, and we stand against the evils of the axis of the forces of the and God bless America. There you go. Oh, forgot. There you go. I just saved you 2 hours. Like, these guys don't say anything new. It's the most boring shit you can possibly watch. It'd be like, it's a religious ceremony, right? Like, you can watch it for the religious kind of ceremony of it, but like, once you see one pageant, you've seen them all, you know how it goes, and if you're not interested in participating in the pageant, right? Like, I don't go to church. And there's a reason why I don't go to church, because I'm not interested in participating in the pageantry of it and the nonsense of what modern churches have become. And so I don't see any reason to pay any attention to what these guys say during their religious ceremonies. Might as well put on like a little hat, right? We are the papacy, right? Yeah, Peacecraft, man, like, you've shown fairly, like, significantly that your positions are very weird and strange, so I don't think I'm going to be betting money with you. Like, betting money on what? Like, literally, you're like, Hitler is a socialist. Like, junk positions like that are just nonsense. Like, probably time to start thinking, my man. Like, oh, a person used to be one way, and then they changed their mind, and so that means the way they used to be is what the bad thing is. That person used to be a socialist, but now he's a Nazi, and so that means socialism is bad, and not Nazism. Like, yikes. That kind of Nazi apologetics, dude. Like, man, I can't believe that fantastic incorporation to eliminate class distinction is exactly the same thing as democratic ownership through the means of production, that the Italian worker councils were the same thing as... to pretend as though the fascists and the communists were the same is embarrassing. Like literally the fascists are walking around saying we need to purge the society of ethnic groups, that the Italian worker councils were explicitly racist and exclusionary. Like, you're living in a pretend... No, Peacecraft, like, you're the most illiterate person I've talked to in a long time. You're one of these people who thinks you know things and you don't. No, this is what's insane, my man. Like, the fascists were explicitly racist. Like, we've read Mein Kampf. Like, we've listened to Mussolini. We understand. No, it's not heated. It's just embarrassing. Like, it's just embarrassing to watch somebody embarrass themselves with this classic, like, oh, fascism and communism are the same. Like, okay. We're good. We don't need somebody who's obviously got some mental issues going on in the chat. Good luck out there, bud. Maybe don't be a Nazi sympathizer. Okay. Of course, I'm hoping my wife lets me attend a Jews Against Genocide protest at the Israeli embassy Monday morning. Yeah, Larry, I know how important this issue is to you, and I know how, and that's a real claim. Like that's a real thing that you're planning on doing, and there's real stakes for you. I understand your wife's hesitation without a doubt. I think that you should do it anyway. I think that you should go anyway, because the thing that that the villains of the piece, the things that the Nazis don't want people to do, is show up. They don't want that. They want people to stand by and watch it happen. That's what they want. And what is dangerous for them is people standing up and people marching and people lending voice and people shining the light on it. And if it's not going to be people like you, then who is it going to be? That's my encouragement. And like, we are all just temporary beings living in this reality, right? Like we don't stay here. So leave your mark while you're here. Charmar, yeah, the peace guy had some mental issues, it seems. Yeah, I mean, if you think that communism and fascism are the same thing and you're telling people that they don't know theory, then you're an embarrassing person at best, right? And chances are good he just, like his dad told him so, and so he just goes along with what his dad has to say. War Knight, good to see you. Eric, when I tried to explain to her that Zionism, Jews, Semitism are not the same thing, even Arabs are Semitic, when I tried to explain those things, it went way above her head. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how they're willing to levy these heavy accusations, but aren't actually willing to understand what the accusation they're making is. Mikhail, good to see you. Yeah. Well, I mean, Eric, I think what you're describing is intentional stupidity, right? It's attempting to not understand the subject on purpose. That's what it is. That once you become convinced that something is the way it is, and once you have a stake in it being that way, especially if you have a stake on your society being right, if you have a stake on if you worship the hierarchy, right? If you're in that state of hierarchy worship and the people at the top of the hierarchy said it, so therefore, right? Then the only real thing that you have left when the truth is put in front of you is play dumb. That's really all you have left. And you can see people who are otherwise very intelligent people who obviously can create distinctions and create intelligent thought. You can see them very clearly play dumb and just become the dumbest people in the room, just simply because it contradicts what Daddy said, and that's it. Daddy said so I got to play dumb now, and I don't think it's conscious. I don't think people are like, I am going to play dumb, right? I just think that that's what people do. That when in doubt, just play dumb. John writes, what does late-stage capitalism require the U.S. and NATO to subsidize nations like Ukraine? Why does late-stage capitalism require U.S. NATO to subsidize nations like Ukraine and Israel, even after the defeat of Soviet influence and after decades of unipolarity? Well, John, it's because empires can only exist through violence. That's the only way that they permeate. That's the only way they survive, right? And so you've got to fund Ukraine, and you've got to fund Israel. You've got to fund an independence movement in Hong Kong. You've got to fund an independence movement in Taiwan. You've got to create problems for your competitors because you view everything as a competition. You view everything as a competition with one winner at the top. That there can only be one supreme leader. That this supremacist mindset, especially of American Manifest Destiny, right, says that like, oh well, if the Chinese or the Russians, right, or the Middle East are able to live peaceably, then they become a threat to our supremacy, and we can no longer just go into whatever region we like and steal whatever resource we want. And so you have to maintain the concept of the empire, to maintain the hierarchy, to maintain the system. You have to use extreme acts of violence and pretend as though that the response to that violence is the same as the violence itself, which we're seeing writ large in the conversation in Israel, right? War Night, I read it was reported that the Gaza hospital bombing being done by Israel was disproven. Yeah, I mean, it's so obviously false. Like, it's so obviously false, dude. Just think of the basics. Like, the basic, oh, I'm sorry, I misread this. Reported that the Gaza hospital bombing being done by Israel was disproven. No, that's nonsense. It's obvious that Israel bombed this place. Who else could have? Right? Hamas? Okay, so suddenly Hamas has all of the resources in the world to blow up major infrastructure and major buildings. Oh, okay, suddenly out of nowhere. Okay. They also have motive, right? Hamas has all the motive in the world to want to blow up its own infrastructure and its own people, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense on the face of it. And who are the people who are doing the quote-unquote disproving, right? Yeah, War Night. I thought the IDF spokesperson, so the Israelis said that it was a failed missile launch from Hamas. Oh, well, if the Zionists said it, then it's 100% the case, right? Oh, the genocidal, psychopathic Zionists who have been committing a genocide against the Palestinians for decades now, over 50 years now, they said that it was a failed launch from Hamas. Oh, that makes it true then. Like, no. Like, what this is, and I don't understand. Like, there's this hyper focusing on this hospital, right? But everybody acknowledges that they've literally carpet bombed the shit out of everything else, right? So they're carpet bombing around the hospital. They're carpet bombing up and down the streets. They're literally laying waste and rubbleizing everything around. But one bomb drops on a hospital, and suddenly people are like, Israel would never ever would Israel do something so heinous and despicable as bomb a hospital that they definitely bombed, for sure, 100%. And any other narrative is sort of just embarrassing. Like, they're clearly lying. It's so obvious that they're lying. Where would Hamas even get this bomb from? How could they launch this bomb? The whole thing, and my favorite part about it is that the entire narrative begins with the premise that Hamas was in the hospital because Israel knows exactly where Hamas is, right? That oh my God, we got hit with the largest surprise attack that no one could possibly see coming in decades from Hamas, and we can't find these guys, and we got to go in there, and we're telling all the Palestinians that they've got to give up Hamas, or we're going to keep bombing and all this kind of stuff, but we know 100% for sure that they were in that hospital, 100%, yeah. It's just the least believable shit I've ever heard of in my life. You compare that narrative that's being put forward with the simple narrative of Israel moved its targeting system one block to the right and then dropped a bomb there instead of on the street beside it. Which one of those two narratives seems to actually have parity? Which one of those two narratives seems to actually make logical sense? Which one of these narratives actually is like, oh yeah, right? Like that the genocidal regime that is maintaining an apartheid state has been bombing building after building after building after building after building after building, and then they just bombed this building too. Or that Hamas, a loose coalition of poverty-stricken people living in an open-air prison system, managed to get a bomb big enough to level a hospital. They managed to get it undetected into the hospital. They managed to set it up in the hospital to shoot it out of the hospital, and then fucked it up and the thing went off, blowing up the hospital. Which one of these two narratives actually sounds more reasonable and more rational and more logical and more plausible and more real. Because how'd they get the bomb in there? Like, is Israel so certain that it was Hamas that had certainly done this? Certainly. How'd they even get the bomb in there? Is Israel just not even looking? Right? It's clearly got defense systems that it can just drop bombs wherever it wants. Right? It's constantly dropping white phosphorus. It's constantly doing all kinds of crazy shit. Do they not see when somebody is like carting like a 500-pound missile through the streets of Gaza into a hospital? Seems unlikely. Seems pretty implausible, frankly. Like and what I think is really interesting about this conversation, about this hospital conversation, is that nobody seems to give two shits whatsoever that Israel's literally carpet bombing the entire place. That it's just, it's a hospital, that's too far. That you can blow up their house, you can blow up their workplace, you can blow up the bus that they're on, you can blow up a wedding, you can blow up their school, you can blow up their church, their mosque, you can blow up whatever you like. Right, and they have, and they do, and there's plenty of evidence to show of the rubbleization of Gaza over the decades. But a hospital now, that's too much. Oh my God! Like, they bombed that hospital, and for anybody to pretend otherwise is strange and weird, unusual and peculiar, odd, very odd. Has me looking very skeptical at the person who is saying that, it was Hamas that bombed their own hospital full of their own people. They did it to make people look bad. Yeah, it was an accident. They wanted to turn their there's kind of a weird racist white chauvinism that comes along with this idea that they wanted to what? They're using children as human shields. They put missiles in a hospital to what? Make it a target? Like, the whole narrative doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever. And like, if Hamas can have a missile in a hospital that's capable of leveling that hospital, and the Israelis don't know where they are, well, then why have the missile in the hospital in the first place? Why put a missile in a hospital if the Zionists don't know where you are? Why not just put it in an abandoned shack somewhere? Why not just shoot it from some abandoned shelter? Oh, yeah, it's because these brown people are obviously psychopaths who are using hospitals as human shields, and we would never bomb a hospital, so we accept that they'll shoot missiles from there, even though we're literally bombing directly beside that hospital. Like, come on. Like, come on, man. Like, it defies belief. It's just astounding that people come in here with this junk. Venus Massive, what's my opinion for Turkey? I mean, Turkey's like, I have to say I'm impressed by Turkey's agility here. Like, make no mistake, their country is far right, right? Like, it's a far right, fascist adjacent, and people do make the argument that they've gone full blown fascist. And there's evidence, right, that that's the case. Here's Turkey. Major war on that border for the last 20 years. Major war on this border for the last 20 years, right? These guys are literally in like a linchpin position. There was a war in Georgia, right, within the last 20 years involving one of the largest superpowers, right? Here's Ukraine. Have you been hearing about Ukraine? Well, there's Turkey. Right? And their connection to the Black Sea and the relationship that Turkey has with Russia and all of this. It's a miracle Turkey has not just fallen over. It's just sort of a miracle. I mean, we can discuss what Georgia was, but like it was a political event, without a doubt. You're right. It wasn't full-scale war. That's correct. Yeah, that's a fair thing to say. So the fact that Turkey has managed to stabilize itself during this period of time, it's very clearly taking a position of do what's good for Turkey. Do what's good for Turkey. Like, we'll trade with the EU, right? And the EU finds this valuable because, like, you just take a look at this corridor. That's Istanbul. Like, it's a very important corridor that exists right here. Turkey's position is, well, let's do business with the US. Let's do business with the EU. Let's do business with Russia, right? Because we're going to do what's right for Turkey. And they don't have allegiances. Their allegiance is to Turkey. And they are basically taking everything deal by deal, situation by situation, circumstance by circumstance. And I don't hear a lot of like, well, the history of this is that coming out of Turkey. Because I think Turkey is not in a position where they're afforded that luxury. I think that they're very much like, oh, this is the deal on the table today? I'll take it. Oh, this is the deal for today? Okay. This is the deal for today? No. But you said yesterday. Yeah. That was yesterday. Today, this is the deal. And I think that that's the position Turkey finds itself in. I think they're very survival oriented. And in many ways, they're like Iran in that way. Like, Iran is very survival oriented. And so it's tough to criticize them internally, right? Yeah, like, I don't really critique nations that we are actively fucking with, right? I don't think that we have the moral right to do so. So I know more about Iran than I do Turkey, so I'll use Iran as the example here. That Iran is a far-right theocracy, right? Like, people will go so far as to say that they're fascist. I don't think that they're fascist, but they're definitely far-right. They're militant, without a doubt, right? Well, the truth is that when your society is in a state of its survival mode, when you put a society in survival mode, and you can see this happening in our society, by the way, societies that fall into survival mode need the people who are willing to fight and the people who are willing to uphold the culture to be the leaders of the country. That happens every single time. Anytime a country goes to war, who takes power? The people who are willing to fight and the people who are there to uphold your nation's culture. The people who are willing to close the border, the people who are willing to enact a draft, the people who are willing to do these things are the people who take power. In Iran, what do you end up with? Militant theocrats. Like, that's who's going to do that. You see the same thing in Afghanistan. The minute the United States left, who took over? The militant theocrats, right? Turkey, near as I can tell, is not theocratic, but they're militant for sure. And it makes sense. So it's just, it's a total crapshoot. I am in awe with Turkey's stability. Like, you don't hear too much of crisis happening in Istanbul. I think the last major news story that I heard in Turkey was that Erdogan rounded up political opposition, but there was also credible evidence to show that political opposition was planning a coup. So I didn't dig too deep into it because there's all this going on, and like, Turkey is Turkey and dealing with Turkey. So I am just in awe of their ability to be stable more than anything. Just their ability to stabilize themselves and to not collapse. And like, it just seems to me that the EU sees Turkey as valuable and Russia sees Turkey as valuable. Command Genius, good to see you. Oh yeah, the Middle East has a long history of communism, right? The communist parties have been all throughout the Middle East for long periods of time. So, and it makes sense that like the militant communists would be Maoists, right? Because that's what the Maoists are. They're militant communists. I skipped a bunch of stuff here, right? Random question, do you groom your beard? Yes. I keep getting knots in my beard. Yeah, that's going to happen. Get an afro pick. Get an afro pick. Honestly, we don't know what happened with the hospital. What's important is that they've sowed the seeds of doubt, and the conversation can be deferred until a later point when other war crimes overshadow it. Well, yeah, I mean, there's that, Larry, but my point is, like, I just don't see why this is the centerpiece of the conversation at all. Like, oh, they bombed a building slightly to the left. It's fine if you bomb children in their homes, right? But if you do it in a hospital, that's the problem. Yeah, Israel has bombed hospitals in the past, has bombed UN ranch schools, disabled rehab centers. Yeah, this is nothing new. Orthodox Protheria Church was bombed, apparently. Israel is saying it's fake news. Yeah, because Israel's the one we definitely need to be believing. Yeah, they can find something else to deny. And all those communist projects got destroyed by a certain external force. Yeah. Almost all militant communist parties are Maoist. Yeah, there are like 2 that are not Maoist. I mean, it makes sense. Like, it just makes sense. Like, Mao was very successful, right? Like, and if you are facing like a legitimate externalized threat, if you are facing like a legitimate guys with guns kicking in doors, rounding up people threat, then yeah, being a Maoist makes all the sense in the world, right? Like, pick up a gun, defend yourself. Maoist. One of the interesting things that's actually happening in Canadian politics, right, is things have gotten so bad that even the Liberals are starting to acknowledge that it's getting bad, right? So the people who are standing up and honoring Nazis in the halls of power are saying we have to see a ceasefire, that Israel is taking things too far. And Trudeau, I'm going to read this article because it's actually hilarious. Like, it's so obviously like hysteria. This is from Sabrina Maddow. Trudeau's dash to blame Israel for Gaza hospital explosion, an embarrassment to Canada. So Justin Trudeau did not get the message that we should not pay attention to our eyes. That instead we should... He didn't get the narrative memo. Why is that popping up? That's so fucking annoying. All right, it doesn't matter. He didn't get the narrative memo, right? That he basically looked at the situation with his eyes, saw reality, because it's difficult to miss, and has said, and has inferred, right? He didn't explicitly say it, but he inferred that the Israelis just bombed a hospital, right? Because obviously they did. For a party, but this is the National Post, right? So this is like the far-right Nazis. For a party that so brazenly accuses its opponents of spreading disinformation and misinformation, the federal liberals too often fail to pass their own test. In the aftermath of Hamas's brutal terrorist attack on Israel, and in the midst of one of the most pivotal geopolitical crises in recent years, and a pronounced spike in anti-Semitism, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and some of his cabinet ministers seem to be having a hard time breaking their bad habits. On Tuesday, reports emerged that the Al-Ali hospital in Gaza had been struck by a missile. The information came from the health ministry in Gaza, which blamed Israel for the strike and claimed that up to 500 people had been killed. Wow, guys. Hamas has the ability to level a hospital, and they're not shooting those rockets at buildings in Israel. That's impressive. Quick to forget everything journalists and politicians know about wartime propaganda and bad actors' use of false flags, some in the Canadian media, along with certain elected officials, rushed to share unverified, suspect information condemning Israel in the process. Dude, this is like comedy gold. This is comedy gold, man, to listen to these obvious, overt, frothing at the mouth, war hawkish, Nazi level threats talk about this stuff as if they have a moral position to take, as if they have a leg to stand on. It's the best. It's absolutely the best. The news coming out of Gaza is horrific and absolutely unacceptable, Trudeau correctly told reporters. He should have stopped there. Instead, he continued, international humanitarian and international law needs to be respected in this and in all cases. There are rules around wars, and it's not acceptable to hit a hospital. While he didn't mention Israel by name, the implication was clear as day. Yeah, because it's really fucking obvious what happened. Like, it's really, really, like, 1 + 1 = 2. You've got to be a very dim-witted person to actually stand in front of anybody, anywhere, at any time, and pretend as though Israel didn't do the thing it's done before. Again. Like, this is like pretending like a guy who beats his wife did not beat his wife that one time. Like, obviously. As more reports begin to emerge that Hamas or the Islamic Jihad terror group were actually behind the strike, source required, trust me, bro, either intentionally or via failed rocket launch, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly took to Twitter, writing, "Bombing a hospital is an unthinkable act, and there's no doubt doing so is absolutely illegal." Like, you see how these guys just say things as if they are true, right? Just, Hamas did it. That's it. And it's worth bringing up. I've got this great, here it is. Israel's style of public relations. This is from 2004, and this is from Adam Johans, Secretary, Cardiff Stop the War Coalition. A quick guide to Israel's PR methods. 1. We haven't heard reports of deaths. We'll check into it. 2. The people were killed, but by a faulty Palestinian rocket or bomb. We are here. 3. Okay, we killed them, but they were terrorists. 4. Okay, they were civilians, but they were being used as human shields. 5. Okay, there were no fighters in the area, so it was our mistake. But we kill civilians by accident, they do it on purpose. 6. Okay, we kill far more civilians than they do, but look how terrible other countries are. 7. Why are you still talking about Israel? Are you some kind of anti-Semite? Test this against the next interview you hear or watch. That's basically the playbook, right? This is the playbook that Hamas did it to themselves, right? The people were killed, but it was a faulty Palestinian bomb. That's essentially where we're at. On Wednesday morning, long after it became widely acknowledged Israel was likely not responsible for the destruction, source required, Industry Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne tweeted, "The attack on the Al-Ali Arab Hospital in Gaza is horrifying and against international humanitarian law. My thoughts are with the victims and their loved ones. Let's be clear, there can be no justification to strike a hospital, nor civilians." Meanwhile, around the same time, U.S. President Joe Biden was in Israel, publicly telling Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that the strike looked to have been launched from the other team, not you. Oh, well, so the psychos agree. He continued, but there's a lot of people out there who are not sure, so we've got to overcome a lot of things, right? Yeah, like you've got to overcome the narrative of how did Hamas get this missile that's capable of leveling a hospital? How did they get it to the hospital? How did they get the equipment in order to launch the missile in the hospital? How did they set it up? And then how did they fire it? All while being completely undetected, while simultaneously answering the pretty basic question of why would they do this? Why would they use the hospital? Why would they set it up there? Like, if the IDF is so incapable of knowing where Hamas is, then why didn't they just do this in an abandoned like building somewhere? There's 100 abandoned buildings that have been bombed out. Just use one of them. The IDF clearly can't find you, doesn't know where you are, and doesn't know what's going on. So just set it up somewhere else where there isn't, like, you know, injured people and children around. Like, it seems to me to be kind of an odd narrative to say, oh, they were setting it up because they were using those people as human shields, but you don't know where they are. Like, you can't find these guys, right? So why would they use human shields and draw attention to themselves in a highly sensitive area when literally anywhere would work? Like, it's just kind of an oddball position to take. But we're in an oddball time. That those people he referred to appear to include senior Canadian cabinet ministers and the Prime Minister should be an international embarrassment. And it is an international embarrassment for you. It's an international embarrassment for the people who are standing up pretending as though the hospital was bombed by someone other than Israel, right? That what we should be doing right now is having a very serious conversation about the nature of this conflict. We should be talking about a ceasefire. We should be talking about this stuff. That reminded me, Loaf, I haven't seen you in a while, bud. Good to see you. The Israeli PR on Twitter was bragging about leveling the hospital until public outrage got them to delete the tweet. I'd love to see an article or something on that, Loaf, because I haven't actually seen that. Because, like, it's so obvious what happened that, honestly, like, this is just one of these moments where, like, they're trying to convince you that 1 + 1 = potato. And it's, like, so obviously false. It's, like, clearly false. So do you really got to do your due diligence? And honestly, things like this are just going to surface, right? We're just going to find, like, a case where exactly this. The military is like, yeah, we bombed the shit out of that place. Haha, we got that hospital. Oh, people are paying attention to it and caring. Delete the tweet, right? And someone like Caitlin Johnstone or something like this is going to get a hold of that tweet and do an article on it, and then I'll report on it here, right? So I'm just skipping to the end because it's really obvious what's happened. And the people who are coming in, like my favorite, man, are the people who are coming in pretending like that's not what's going on, right? That's my favorite. Like the real dimwits in the conversation, the real low-level dimwits coming in and being like, well, Israel said that they didn't do it, and so that's true. Okay, bud. Turns out that genocidal maniacs are also liars, right? Tyler the Goat writes, do you hate your country because it's capitalist? The whole thing? The entire system? No. That, in fact, the reason why I speak out is for a love of my country and for a love of my people. That we have fallen victim in a systemic issue, which is the systemic issue of capitalism, which creates a natural antagonism in the system. There's a natural antagonism to our system that is central to our society that we should do away with, that we should delete from the system for the betterment of our society, right? That we could do better. Tyler says, so reform is the way to go then, right? It's fixable. I mean, I do not suggest reform because reform implies that capitalism is fine. We just need to tweak the numbers. We just need to redistribute wealth, or we need to put in redistributive models or any of that kind of stuff. My solution is to be rid of the system of capital completely. And the central mechanism by which capital works and functions. And that central mechanism is that there is an ownership class, people who are parasites, who have no value at all, who siphon wealth away from others, and then people who do the work, right? And that would be the working class. That for some reason we have permitted the idea that a person who does no work and contributes nothing should own everything and make all the decisions, whereas people who do all the work and actually create the society and are actually what's valuable in the society should own nothing and at the behest of those people, right? Tyler writes, yeah, bro, good luck. Without a reasonable transition, nothing is going nowhere. I mean, the society has never moved in the direction of the working people without a working class movement. It has never been the case in the history of capitalism ever that without boots on the ground, without people standing in front of the parliament buildings, without significant ground energy coming from below, there hasn't even been base reform. That if your position is, oh, well, we need to create a transition, well, the only way that transition is going to get agreed to by the people who hold power, by the psychopaths who are willing to literally bomb people, the only reason they're going to go along with it is if they feel threatened. And that's literally the only way that we can organize this. And that's literally the only thing that can be done. Because if your plan is just vote for the lesser evil, they own the lesser evil. Right? They own the liberals, they own the conservatives, they own the NDP, they own the political system. They've created a theater, right? They've created a theater and called it politics, but they own the entire thing, and the system's not going to reform itself, right? That the only way that it will actually respond to working people, and you can see this through the strike movements that are happening through the United States, that the only thing that these people will respond to is a working class movement that threatens them. That's it. You're not gonna vote these guys out. You're not gonna vote away their power. Like, they're not gonna agree to a transition. Like, in the same way that, like, monarchists, that kings don't just agree to a transition, right? In the same way that kings didn't just say, like, we can do better than the monarchy. I will cease being the king. Like, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. Reform is not the way. Go read Reform or Revolution by Rosa Luxemburg. Yeah, that's a good one. A reasonable transition is needed. That's correct. You can look at the NEP or the Cultural Revolutions. And like, I think there's a sharp difference between what communists mean when they say transitionary period and what capitalists mean. Like, communists are saying we need a transitionary period to get rid of... yeah, but no one is going to step out and create a revolution. Hi, hello. Like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, hi, hello, hi, greetings, hi. You're literally here looking at it. And yeah, I understand. Like, I understand. Like, this is how desperate things have gotten. That it's taking this. It's taking this. But to pretend as though there are not people doing it, to pretend as though the Occupy movement did not happen, to pretend as though there is zero revolutionary energy is to live in a pretend world. I would agree with you that many people would buy into it if you would have said, look, changing the system in the snap of the finger will never happen. In the meantime, we could do X and Y, eventually get to communism. Yeah, I mean, that's essentially the position of the Chinese Communist Party, right? That the Chinese Communist Party calls itself socialist with Chinese characteristics, and its intention is to achieve communism, right? And that we can do X and Y and Z, and we can do that. But they also have a stated goal and an agenda that they follow through on, right? That I agree. Like, you're correct. We're not going to be able to just snap our fingers and make it happen. But if we don't actually get together and start moving forward and start moving against capital, right? Like, and we need to move forward with a very strong narrative that capital is our enemy. Like, capital is our enemy. It is a problem that we are dealing with, right? And if we don't have that narrative, if we fall into this oddball narrative that says, well, capitalism's okay, it just needs modest reform, right? Bro, you sound desperate. Yeah. Like, do you not know what's going on, bud? Like, do you not understand what's happening in the world? Like, for real. Like, do you not understand what's actually happening in the world? My prime minister, this guy right here, just honored a Nazi in parliament, right? Right now, we are witnessing, like, an overwhelming Western-fueled genocide occurring against Palestinian people. And it seems as though our society is cool with that. Like, do you not understand what's actually going on in your society? Like, Nobody is standing like, and we're not even getting into the climate change conversation. We're not even getting into the conversation where the Earth itself is finally turning against us, right? Like, are you just simply unaware of the crazy nonsense of what's going on in your society, where literally half of the society is now like $200 away from bankruptcy? Like we are in this absolutely absurdist period of time. Hold on. That one I need to bring up. Because that's just like stunning to see. It's actually stunning to see that that many Canadians, this is literally from like Bloomberg News. Many Canadians uncomfortably close to broke. 51% of Canadians are $200 or less away. And the system is not responding to it. No, you're just not used to talking to adults. Right? But we don't go schizo. Yeah. You're just not used to talking to adults who are actually going to talk about this seriously like an adult would. We are abandoning our people. We are plunging people into homelessness and desperation, and while we are doing it, we are literally erecting systems like the MAID system in order to funnel desperate, disabled, poor people into suicide camps. This is literally what we are doing. That we have clearer and clearer and clearer and clearer evidence that this is the case. Hold on, I just fucking posted this, and it's driving me crazy that I don't have this. The trouble is that you're just used to bowing your head passively and taking it. That's the trouble. The trouble is that you're just so used to saying, yes, sir, whatever you say, sir, I'll check that little box, I'll sign that little agreement, absolutely, that when you actually talk to somebody who's saying, if we continue moving forward this way, we are going to get absolutely fucked. Like, do you understand the stakes of what is happening? Because I don't think you do. I think that you think you're going to turn to the people who are creating the problem and that you think you can negotiate your way out of it, and you can't. And you're calling people schizo for pointing that out. The hard reality of living in a society that's actively on purpose dedicated to the cause of abandoning its own citizens, actively polluting and poisoning the environment and destroying everything around it on purpose with the stated goal that it's doing it for the economy, and the inconvenient people that its system is creating, they're literally funneling into suicide camps. Like, and then you stand up and say, with this kind of scoffing dismissal, oh, wow, dude, you sound desperate. Yeah. Bro. Yeah. What do you think is happening? And you know what's going to happen to you? Right? Is that the hammer is going to come down on these people. We're going to see thousands and thousands of people get funneled into the streets. We're going to see suicides skyrocket. We're going to see food bank usage skyrocket. We're going to see homelessness skyrocket. We're going to see drug death and suicide skyrocket. We're going to literally go to war. And people like you are just going to keep going to work and saying, you know what, we just need minor reforms. Yeah, we just need minor reforms. Tough shit. Too bad. No. I refuse to stand around like a loser while I watch my country abandon people into poverty, desperation, and death, pretending as though all we got to do is check a box once every little while. And I will not be called desperate or schizo or any other ridiculous name by some fucking pathetic loser who doesn't even understand that there's a fight going on. A real fight. For real. That has stakes and are significant. You don't even know what's happening around you. And you're fucking coming in here and lecturing me. Fuck off. Stand up and fight. Start organizing with the people around you as if the stakes are real and high, because they are. Abandon the liberals, conservatives, NDP, and Green. Vote for the guy with the boot on his head. And have some goddamn respect. Fuck off. Grow up. Fucking grow up. Stop listening to Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro. Put down TikTok. Fucking go talk to some adults. Like, Jesus fucking Christ with these losers. We're just gonna vote our way out of it. Yeah, okay. Loaf. Fantastic, my man. Fucking fantastic. I can always count on you guys. I don't know why you're getting so upset. I'm just saying that we're watching people get fucking abandoned and we should do nothing about it. Except go vote. Fuck off. The Israeli deputy media advisor, appointed by Israeli PM Netanyahu, first immediately admitted and even bragged that Israel bombed the Baptist hospital, and then deleted it and changed the story after seeing it get bad. Yeah, they admitted to it. Here you go. Like... It always goes down this way, eh? Like, it always goes down this way. Thanks again, Loaf. I appreciate it, dude. What a timely return. It always goes down this way, doesn't it? It always goes down this way. It's every single time, every single fucking time. Some event happens. I call it correctly right away. The denial campaign happens. The propaganda campaign happens. We debunk the propaganda, right? And I do say we because it's oftentimes you guys bringing this stuff forward, right? And then what happens? The story goes away. That's what happens every single fucking time. Every single fucking time. Only this time it happened in like in a second. It happened like in like rapid succession, right? Israeli Air Force, this is from Naftali, no less. Israeli Air Force struck a Hamas terrorist base inside a hospital in Gaza. A multiple number of terrorists are dead. It's heartbreaking that Hamas is launching rockets from hospitals, mosques, schools, and using civilians as human shields. Islamic Jihad bombed and then they changed it. Islamic Jihad bombed a hospital in Gaza. It fired a barrage of rockets into Israel, and one of them misfired and hit a hospital, killing hundreds. Hamas has rockets that are capable of killing hundreds of people, and yet that's more than Hamas has managed to kill in decades. Like, it's been, like... And bookmarked. And bookmark. Gaza hospital confession. Like there's always a piece of evidence like this. This is why I don't buy in to conspiracies. This is why I don't buy into most conspiracies. Because most situations and most circumstances and most things that are happening have like a literal fucking smoking gun. There's literally somebody standing up being like, yeah, we bombed that hospital and it was right to do it. Like, here it is, their confession, they confessed to it. John, calling those people Nazis, that's aggressive. That is aggressive. That you can't possibly be serious. You've lost your mind calling Nazis Nazis when you accurately call Nazis Nazis. That offends me as a little boy who's never grown up. Saddam Hussein. Great name, dude. Just great name. And I love that you finished it up with a 42069. Just great. Yeah, like clockwork. They spread the propaganda and then hide the reaction. Oh, yeah, the audio clip, right? I saw this audio clip and immediately I was like, sure, because you can't just hire two guys to stand in a room and say things. Oh, let's set off a rocket and fire it at, checks notes, Israel. Yes, I agree. We should shoot rockets at those Zionists. Allah be praised. Allah be praised. Like, just shitty. Like, they're not even trying. Give me some, like, I wish, like, this is the big thing about all the, like, CIA, like the high-level CIA conspiracies. It's like, it sort of imbues the CIA with capabilities they don't have, right? They're actually pretty dumb. It's just that we're dumber. That's all. Jordan Peterson is the closest thing to Hitler that we see now in the West. If you look at a range of Hitler public speeches and comment, you see a range like JPB. It's not Naftali Bennett, is it? Hold on. I want to be 100% sure on my sourcing here. Hananya Naftali. Hananya Naftali. Come on. Wow, does this guy not have a Wikipedia page? This guy doesn't have a Wikipedia page. Oh, here it is. He's an Israeli influencer, recently came forward and apologized for a tweet that led to misinformation. Right? Like, this is the thing about it, right? It's like, it's so obvious that Israel did this, that a guy like this is just like, yeah, okay, let's just report it. That what we're watching is we're watching them react and cobble together a propaganda narrative in real time, right? We're watching them sort of form it up in real time, and there isn't like a cohesive element. And so Justin Trudeau will come out and say, like, hey, whoa, what Israel did is crazy, right? And these guys will be like, oh, hey, whoa, yeah, we bombed the shit out of it, right? Why? Because that's what happened, right? You've got to be a dimwit to think anything else happened, right? Like, this Naftali is a Israeli Jewish influencer and human rights activist who is constantly speaking about anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, and the BDS movement. So he accurately reports on what happened and then gets told to change the narrative. That's what happens. Like, we are... Like, it is moments like this, right? Like, it is moments like this where, like, we are living in this absolute absurdist moment. But it's very, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, and I'll keep saying it, it's very revealing. It's a very revealing moment that we're going through. That we're actually seeing people for who they are and for what it is. And the rest of the world. Like, if there was anyone in the rest of the world who was even remotely on the fence as to what it is that America stands for, We're golden. Like, they know. They have a very clear idea. You think about, like, the Chinese have their foreign minister outright said that Israel has gone too far. Like, that's like 1.5 billion people basically looking at the West being like, you guys are nuts. Like, you've lost it. And near as I can tell, that's correct. We've lost it. We're absolutely fucking nuts. We've absolutely lost our fucking minds. But, oh yeah, we can reform it. That's the thing to do. Just, like, reform the system. Just reform it. Everything's completely fine, right? Rayner's newsletter. Most Americans have turned against the Ukraine proxy war. Now we must unite them behind the anti-Zionist movement. Our ruling class hopes that the recent developments in Palestine, wherein the fake colonial country of Israel is trying to crush a liberation effort, will dissuade the majority of Americans from joining the rising anti-imperialist movement. It, at first, looks like the way most of the American people have reacted to these events represents a regression in their anti-imperialist consciousness, compared to their recent rejection of the Ukraine PSYOP. Most people in this country who have been shown to sympathize more with Israel, at least initially, and that's consistent with the anti-Arab, anti-Islam basis, which imperialist propaganda has made dominant for decades, and which allowed the empire to invade Afghanistan and Iraq. The elites want to view this wave of pro-Israel sentiment as confirmation that nothing has changed since September 11th, 2001, when jingoism and pro-war attitudes were perhaps at their highest in U.S. history. They want to believe the American people of today are the same nature that they were a generation ago, and will be of that nature a generation from now. This is not how history works. Nothing can remain the same. Everything is a constant process of change. The pro-Israel reaction for most Americans has happened in the context of other events. Events which make these Americans more likely to come to the pro-Palestine stance, should we provide them with the educational resources for doing so. Since 9/11, we've seen the discrediting of the ruling class ideology with the 2008 crisis, the further exposing of our social dysfunction with the mismanagement of the pandemic, wars that have continued for a full generation and caused most Americans to stop supporting Ukraine only a year and a half after February 2022. Biden's Ukraine scam has exacerbated inflation, bringing the people to a living standard crisis that doesn't stop getting worse. And now our government is telling us that funding another war is more important than investing in the development of our own economy. Should we do the work required for bringing the people to a complete anti-imperialist consciousness and let them turn their recent disillusionment over Ukraine into an expanding awareness about the global crimes of their government, the proxy war on Palestine is going to turn into as much of a narrative loss for the empire as the proxy war on Russia has. We can do this by connecting with the people and the primary source of their present alienation from the social system under which they live, the destruction of their living standards by austerity and imperialist war. To identify such a source of conflict within class society and leverage it towards bringing about progress is to apply the knowledge about history's fluid nature. Bukharin explained this historical dynamic as such. The basis of all things is the law of change, the law of constant motion. Two philosophers, particularly the ancient Heraclitus and the modern Hegel, as we have already seen, formulated this law of change. But they did not stop there. They also set up the question of the manner in which the process operates. The answer they discovered was that changes are produced by constant internal contradictions, internal struggle. Thus, Heraclitus declared, conflict is the mother of all happenings, while Hegel said, contradiction is the power that moves things. There is no doubt of the correctness of this law. A moment's thought will convince the reader. For if there is no conflict, no clash of forces, the world would be in a condition of unchanging, stable equilibrium, i.e. complete and absolute permanence, a state of rest, precluding all motion. Such a state of rest would be conceivable only in a system whose component parts and forces would be so related as to not permit of the introduction of any conflicts, and to preclude all mutual interaction, all disturbances. As we already know that all things change, all things are in flux, it is certain that such an absolute state of rest cannot possibly exist. We must therefore reject a condition in which there is no contradiction between opposing and colliding forces, no disturbance of equilibrium, but only an absolute immutability. Our job as Marxists is to find where the interests of the people conflict with those of the imperial state, then give the people the ideological and political training to assert their interests. The mandate for us to do this shows the difference between the compatible left and the element that seeks to build a relationship with the people. Only the latter truly applies the lessons that come from studying the Hegelian dialectic. The element I'm talking about, represented by the Marxist organizers who will put on a convention with the other anti-imperialist tendencies on December 2nd, is the one that's capable of effectively responding to the crimes of Zionism and imperialism. It's the element whose understanding of what class struggle means is based not within movementism, where an organization seeks to organize for its own sake, but within the same majoritarian mode of practice which let early 20th century American communism thrive. As one of the December 2nd convention's leader, Caleb Maupin, has concluded, the insular model of today's dominant left organizations was pioneered by World Workers' Party, the soft Trotskyist formation, which produced today's main source of compatible leftism, the PSL. Learning nothing from the disastrous fall of the USSR, WWP focused on building the movement and embracing the pessimistic, drug-infested, sex-obsessed middle-class trend that dominates leftist spaces in the United States, even more in the 1990s. WWP was way ahead of its time in a way, with the kind of cancel culture, bitter, punitive atmosphere, and identity politics obsession that is now typical in almost any socialist environment, first being unleashed inside the Manhattan loft of the International Action Center. Brian Becker's skills as a protest stage manager came in handy in 2002 and 2004 during the height of protests against the Iraq War. Seeing an opportunity, the Answer, Act Now, Stop War, End Racism coalition was formed and began reserving protest permits. With enough money coming in and a layer of cadre loyal to him and the Answer coalition rather than the party overall, the Becker family led more than half of WWP to walk away and form the Party for Socialism and Liberation in 2004. The pro-Palestinian events that organizations like PSL hold aren't able to reach those outside the particular circles which these organizations exclusively seek to appeal to. These organizations can't copy the rhetoric and aesthetics of the Democratic Party and expect to have their protests about Palestine or any other issue affect the thinking of anyone outside that niche space. The model these organizations have adopted make them unable to present communism in a way that differentiates communism from the brand the Democrats put forth. Tailing liberalism is not how to build a base within the broad masses. It's how to provide a niche segment of liberal activists with an outlet for continuing their existing practice, except in a way that feels more radical. Reading Marxist theory isn't going to lead to anything useful if those studying the theory are instructed to avoid truly applying the theory. If they're told to avoid deviating from the safe, liberal-friendly ideology that's become the default within American socialism. The moment has appeared for us to bring the majority of Americans into the socialist, anti-imperialist cause. There are tens of millions of workers who have become alienated from bourgeois politics and who are looking for an avenue to assert their material interests in proletarian revolution. The left opportunists are going to manage to assimilate some of these workers into their project for tailing the Democratic Party, but most of the others are going to remain detached from politics altogether. That is, unless the principled Marxists can connect with them. If we take advantage of this moment, we'll at the least be able to gain enough momentum to outmaneuver the reactionaries and build workers' democracy in the place of the empire. Rainer Shea is not a MAGA communist. Like, he actually isn't. that his position aligns with Chris Hedges. And Chris Hedges' point is that should the right stand up and do an anti-war march, then the left should join them. That's the point. But I've done that. Like, I've talked about identity politics and how liberals use it as a shield. Right? Like, we see that constantly. We got a guy, Badusty, my fellow Canadian brother. Good to see you, my man. Strong first comment. Good to see you, my man. See, and even now, like, this is, what are we talking about? We're talking about this identity politics, and we're talking about this kind of thing, instead of actually talking about, like, the war and how we need to build up the coalition, like this concluding paragraph, right? The majority has appeared for us to bring the moment has appeared for us to bring the majority of Americans into the socialist anti-imperialist cause, right? Like, there's a Maoist Marxist way of critiquing identity politics. This guy's isn't it, to be honest. I mean, all I've ever heard Rainer Shea ever say, and I've read a lot of his stuff, is exactly my point. That identity politics gets used as a shield to deflect away from meaningful conversation. That identity politics is a important conversation to have, but it has become a way for liberals to supplant actual conversation about the working class. Like, that to me is the reality of the situation. That as long as we, and I mean, in America, especially in American, like, it's impossible to avoid these guys. Like, it is. Like, dude, if we followed this moral purity line, like if we did, then everybody would be out. Like, I just don't know what the goal is here. Is the goal to be alone by yourself in a room? Is that the goal? But, like, what's the goal? Like, is the goal to organize and to find coalitions and to find people who are actually willing to work with you to get out there and actually protest and form a movement and actually do something and create compromise and negotiate? Or is the goal to be right in your room by yourself and alone? What's the goal here? The goal is to critique them and for them to do self-criticism to correct themselves. That is the Marxist way. I mean, it just sounds to me like moral purity. That's what that sounds like. The capitalists win. That's what that sounds like. Israeli settler attacks are increasing. Canada won't condemn the Israeli military's complicity. Violent attacks by Israeli settlers and the military against Palestinians in the occupied West Bank have increased dramatically over the past week, following a longer-term uptick under the country's far-right government. Documents obtained by the Maple through an access to information request highlight how the Canadian government has refused to speak up on disturbing details about the Israeli military's complicity in these attacks for months. Specifically, Canadian government staff quietly acknowledged widely publicized evidence about the Israeli military stood by and allowed settlers to terrorize Palestinian civilians in the town of Hawara in a revenge attack described as a pogrom when it took place back in February. Yeah, Israel would never bomb a hospital, guys. They would never bomb a hospital. However, Global Affairs Canada issued only a muted statement of concern following the incident and did not publicly address the Israeli military's role in allowing the attacks to happen. It has so far not issued any specific statements about the more recent settler attacks. Hawara has been a hotspot in a recent spate of settler attacks on Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. On October 6th, the day before Hamas and other Palestinian factions launched a major attack on Israel, Israeli settlers shot a Palestinian man dead. On October 14th, Al Jazeera reported that Palestinians in the West Bank are now living in constant fear as Israeli settlers and soldiers conduct deadly revenge attacks on the civilian population, killing at least 54 people and injuring more than 1,000, including children. Footage obtained by CNN shows Israeli settlers throwing rocks and shooting at a Palestinian home, terrorizing the children living inside. Yet they would never bomb a hospital, though. Mount Royal University professor Mohanan Ayash told The Maple that increases in settler attacks on Palestinians are an important piece of the context in the current escalation of violence. The settlers are extremely well armed and are using military-style equipment and firearms that are actively protected and supported by and enabled in their attacks on Palestinians by the Israeli army, said Ayash. The media pays attention to the horrific incidents like the attacks on Hawara, but this is happening on a daily basis. The incidents also demonstrate the Trudeau government's double standards when it comes to denouncing violence against citizens in the region, Ayash said, as it forcefully condemns attacks on Israelis, but offers relatively vague statements when it comes to the deaths of Palestinians. Canada is not some neutral arbiter in this, Ayash explained. It doesn't actually stand up for human rights. It doesn't actually stand up for anti-racism. It is a racist country. It's a settler colonial country, and it is part of the American imperial hegemony, especially on this question. When we see these different reactions, it's not just about the Canadian government being hypocritical. In a certain sense, they are, but it really is about an expression of what their active participation in this struggle actually looks like. In a February 27th situation report obtained by The Maple through an ATIP request, the Canadian Embassy in Tel Aviv told GAC that 400 extremist settlers descended on Hawara where they burned properties, killed a Palestinian civilian, and injured many others. The attack followed a call from the Settler Regional Council deputy leader for the town to be wiped out. They would never bomb a hospital, though. The settlers launched the attack in revenge for 2 Israeli brothers who were shot dead in a nearby settlement earlier the same day. The killing of the brothers, in turn, came a few days after a major Israeli military operation in the West Bank city of Nablus, which killed 11 Palestinians. The settlers rampaged through Hawara and surrounding areas, torching dozens of houses and cars, killing 1 Palestinian man, 37-year-old Sameh Aktash, and leaving 4 others seriously wounded. The GAC report explained. Never, ever would they blow up a hospital. A partially redacted section of the report noted, according to eyewitnesses, nearby IDF soldiers failed to prevent the destruction, as settlers conducted their attack. The human rights group Yesh Din, the report continued, blamed the IDF for failing to prevent the settlers from destroying the village. Yesh Din described the incident as a pogrom sponsored by the army and government of Israel. The Israeli military later investigated itself and claimed that it had failed to deploy enough soldiers to prevent the attacks. However, a subsequent investigation by CNN found not only did the forces fail to stop the riots in Hawara, they did not protect residents as settlers set fire to Palestinian homes and businesses and blocked emergency services from responding. Instead, when residents threw rocks in reaction to settlers' aggression, Israeli forces fired at the Palestinians with tear gas and stun grenades. This contradicts a detail in the GAC report, which uncritically repeated a claim from the Israeli military that soldiers helped evacuate several Palestinian families from violence. Evidence of the military's complicity was widely reported in the initial news coverage of the incident, but was not acknowledged in the Canadian government's official statements, which were issued through an auxiliary Twitter account belonging to GAC. The account, called Foreign Policy Can, tweeted, "Canada condemns the terrorism," referring to the killing of the Israeli brothers, "and violence in the West Bank, including the killings of 3 Israeli and settler violence against Palestinian civilians, property, and the killing of 1 Palestinian. It then applauded the Israeli government for supposedly addressing the need to reduce tensions. Yeah, they'd never, ever bomb a hospital. That would just beyond the pale. After the incident, far-right Israeli minister Bezalel Smotrich called for Hawara to be wiped out by the Israeli military. One assumes that means hospitals too. GAC only commented on Smotrich's remark when prompted by a request from CBC News. An unnamed GAC spokesperson said, "These shameful comments from Minister Smotrich are unacceptable. We call on the Israeli government to disavow these comments and for an immediate de-escalation of tensions as we enter the important upcoming holiday season." In the months and weeks following the incident, CNN reported, settler attacks continued apace without recourse. Only a handful of settlers who took part in the Hawara pogrom were arrested, and all were released without charge. Although Canada officially recognizes the illegality of Israeli settlements following the Hawara attack, the government declined to sign a joint international statement with 19 other countries and said settler violence is a result of Israel's continued settlement activities. On June 30th, Canada issued a separate joint statement with the United Kingdom and Australia, condemning plans for further settlement expansions by the Israeli government and called for the new measures to be reversed. The statement then went on to praise the Israeli military and security services for condemning what the signatories described as reprehensible and ongoing settler violence targeting Palestinians, but not hospitals, never hospitals. The settler divide. Ayash explained that since the 1970s, narratives about Israel have suggested that the country is divided between right-wing religious settlers and secularists who supposedly support a peaceful two-state solution to the conflict. This narrative persists today, he explained, and portrays right-wing settlers as a nuisance to the Israeli state and military. The reality of the situation is that this narrative was never true, said Ayash. The Israeli government, regardless of its political ideology, has always enabled and encouraged the settlers. The pretense, he added, has all but vanished under the country's current far-right government, which includes convicted racists and supporters of terrorism as key ministers. Itamar Ben-Gvir, Israel's Minister of National Security, is a former settler leader and draws much of his support from that constituency. Since October 7th, he has pledged to distribute 10,000 rifles to arm civilian security teams, including in illegal settlements. But never hospitals, right? Never, ever, under any circumstances, hospitals. Resist colonizers, good to see you. Zionists wouldn't hurt people. They call animals or bomb a hospital they already bombed and recently threatened to bomb again. Yeah. Just a man with opinions. On the brink of World War III and an ethnic cleansing in Palestine, and there's still Marxists out there bickering about who's the true Marxist. Man, this is why these movements are over before they begin. Yeah. Like, our enemy is capital. I've said it over and over and over and over and over again. Our goal is to get people to surround the halls of power. That is actually what it's going to take. That there is no electoral solution. There is no solution to any of this that goes anywhere except through mobilizing the populace to stand outside these people's workplaces and cease participating in a system that's obviously designed to destroy them. That the system itself is designed to destroy us, figuratively and literally. And it's now the stakes have gotten so dramatic and so large that it's not even like, oh, you can't get employment, you just need to get a better job. Now it's literally, oh, the earth itself is going to turn against us and raise the temperature of the earth to a boiling point so that we can't even breathe the air. That's where we're going. That's where we're going, and that's where the system of capital is sending us. And at this stage in the game, anyone who is willing to stand up against the government in protest, stand up against these institutions in protest, stand up against the capitalist class in protest is fine by me. Like, we need to keep our focus on who our enemy is and what the enemy is and what needs to be done. But we're not doing it. We're not doing it at all. And so what is going to happen is that the conservatives are going to take power. Probably the Republicans are going to take power. And a lot of very stupid decisions are going to get made very quickly. And those stupid decisions are going to have reverberations throughout the society. That when we look at a place like Israel, we are seeing our own future. We are seeing what the intention and the goal of our own system is for us. And what it is they are trying to do and what it is they are trying to accomplish. And it's not to our benefit. And it will never be to our benefit. Because the system itself has geared itself for death. That the system itself is a death cult. And it is not going to listen to reason. There is no come to Jesus moment coming. Yep. Saddam Hussein, exactly. The ultra-nationalism of Zionism is basically Americanism in 10 years. I mean, it pays to remember that American history is just full of acts of extraordinary violence against ethnic groups and minority groups. Like, in the 80s, Philadelphia, the police literally burnt down city blocks of Philadelphia to punish and destroy the black population. Huge sections of the prison population in America are black. Like, it's very difficult. Like, it's very difficult for me to believe that we are not going to turn to a place of deep, deep darkness and deep, deep violence as these crises begin to settle into the homeland. Demand Better, good to see you. One of the things I keep thinking about, like, I feel like I should just walk around with a piece of paper and gather up signatures and just, like, run for office on, just like, hey, do you think the rent should be lower? Do you think the rent should be lower? Like, it just seems to me like we have lost sight completely of the most basic things. The most basic things. Like, how has it become normal for rent to be this high? How has it become normal for us to just accept that our food bill should just increase? How has it become normal? Like, how has this become normal? How has it become normal that Canada will legalize medically assisted dying for people addicted to drugs? Some drug user activists have likened the move to eugenics and say Canada should be funding more harm reduction. How has it become normal that some of the most grotesque and brutal violence that we see out there is just normal? That anybody who has been standing around saying, scratching their heads, saying, if you ever look back through history and see genocide, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and wonder, how did that happen? When today we see it so clearly just how wrong it was. It happened just like this, with all the same justifications for it. Yeah, profits over people, the worship of money. Just the worship of money. That money is the thing that matters more than anything else. That it makes total sense for someone to sacrifice their entire life in the pursuit of a currency that we print in the first place. That makes total logical sense to people. It's astounding to me. Just astounding to me. Map. It's not goers. Gosers? Hello to you. Do I want to debate socialism? It's essentially the nature of this channel, my man. Ask whatever question you'd like. Saddam Hussein. Yeah, thank you. Well, we here at the Canadian Commie value communication. My favorite part, though, about what's probably about to happen, and I hope it doesn't, but why do you support communism when it's always failed? That's what I'm expecting to see happen right here. Why do you call yourself a communism when communism has always failed? I know that's true because my daddy said so. Heltosis, nobody hates a leftist like a slightly different leftist. As for me, I'm aware of the fraught relationship between MLs and Ms and anarchists in the past. I'm willing to agree that Marxism should always be included in analysis, but I also insist that an examination of social hierarchy is just as needed. It's a long-standing discussion, for sure. I mean, it just seems odd. You know? That's kind of become my position. That, like, we're literally standing in a burning building. we're standing in a burning building, and someone wants to critique how someone is throwing water onto the fire in the middle of the fire. You know? Like maybe there's a technical correctness to be had. But I also think there is like a time and a place, you know? And we are experiencing like an overwhelming death cult that is absolutely going to destroy us on purpose, as is their stated agenda. And I think that if somebody and a group of people somewhere find a way to fight back against that, and they want to call it whatever they want to call it, but they find their little solidarity group and they've got that going on and they're building that, then good, great. I think, Command Genius, the thing I think you need to be careful of is that this idea can be very alienating. That it's a very alienating thing. That being critical of people and criticizing people, especially when it's not asked for, is alienating. And I do think that the history of leftism and the history of communism and anarchism could use a lot more people who are trying to reach across and say, like, hey, we understand that our enemy is capital. Like, we understand that the enemy is capital and that we need to stay together and focus on who the enemy is. And that if we're going to have disagreements, if we're going to have these conversations, they should be, they should remain just disagreements between allies. But, right. Like, you're describing a criticism of, like, critics against the government. Like, we're attempting to build like a real revolutionary movement that's actually going to move forward. And if the critique is that someone over there is talking to the people on the right, it's just like, I don't know. To me, it gets very tiresome. Like, I want to celebrate people's successes. I want to see people, again, like, if someone is in a position of power and someone's in the government, then they are free to criticize because they have power and they are in a position of power. It's not what we're discussing, right? Like, the patriotic socialists and the mega communists and these guys, they don't have power, right? They are just people who are trying to figure shit out. That's really what it is. And like, you can sort of point things out, and you can we can have conversations about the movement and about that kind of stuff, but the truth is that if they go out and protest, I'm going with them. That's the truth. Like, I have this feeling about the Trotskyists, right? Do you have a good source for that, Command Genius? This Fed thing? I'd love to see something on that. Because I watched Vosh confess to it on his stream, but I don't have the clip. So I'm just wondering if you have that clip. Like, I feel this way very much about the Trotskyists, for example. Like, I don't consider myself a Trotskyist. I don't hate the Trotskyists, right? I think that they like Trotsky, obviously. They're called Trotskyists. But the truth is that when a protest happens, they're there. And that's the truth. And I have been screamed at by Trotskyists for my views. Like, I've had, like, literal, like, been screamed at by these people. And you know what happens when the time comes to go out and protest? We do. We go out there and we protest, right? And we're together. And that, to me, I respect that more than anything else. And if all a person is going to do is not go to the protest and then criticize those that do, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. Command Genius, do you have a source for this, my man? Like, the Vosh one is easy, because I've seen the clip. He confessed to it on a stream. But, like... And I should find that clip so I can have it. But the... Oh, Map Gozers. I've read a few books on communism, specifically Mao's China, and I've learned that all dictators... So if you're calling them all dictators, I don't think that you're reading good books. Like, propagandists can write books too, you know. Dictators that only care about themselves. That's sort of weird to say about a guy like Mao. Like, Mao built the socialism that Mao built, and the civilization and the society that Mao built, like, was obviously a benefit to the Chinese people. And the Chinese people were widely in favor of it. And the National People's Congress, like, to call Mao a dictator is a really, really odd and strange position, right? The National People's Congress is a democratic system. The people are elected to it. It's not Westminster parliamentary democracy, so it's not our system of democracy, but it is a system of democracy and has been acknowledged as a system of democracy by the UN even. And and so calling them dictators is weird. Like, it's just an odd position to me, because they're not. They're elected by their constituents and by the people who work for them, and then they serve those people, and the people like them, right? Mao wanted a nuke so badly that he sacrificed 30 million people, source required, to export goods. Source required. I'll take a source on that. 30 million people dying in a famine. You should have a picture of it. You should have a quote. You should be able to see somebody actually talking about it seriously, right? So I'll take a source for that. Started the Cultural Revolution just to overthrow his number two in a power struggle. Yeah, there definitely was a power struggle between the Dengists and the Maoists, but you should expect that. Like, the yeah. I mean, Map, like, talk to the people who lived through Mao's Cultural Revolution and that live here and see what they say. So talk to the people who abandoned their society, who took their wealth. So talk to capitalists. No, that's okay, right? It's like people who, like, I'm from Cuba and I don't like that they took my dad's plantation, you know? Like, okay, bro. Like, go talk to Falun Gong, right? Like, go talk to the people who were ejected from China for being fascists. Like, nah, it's all right, bud. Like, I'll go take a look at what the people of China have to say, right? The people living there. Right now, the popularity, the Chinese government is extremely popular. They have a popularity rate, and this is from Harvard. I could show you the study if you like it. That the Chinese people approve of their government as high as 90%. So and the current government in the current position is that Mao's Cultural Revolution was ultimately a failure. That's the position of the current government. But the reality is that they tried things and they did stuff, right? Which is more than we can say about us. Like, we don't try anything and we don't do anything. We subserviate ourselves to capital, and then capital basically just finds a way to pilfer as much money from us as possible. I would rather live in a society that attempted to solve the problems of the society and was failing than live in a society that said it was solving the problems of the society and not even trying. And that's exactly what we're doing. If you say, Map, I mean, why does it always come down to this? This is the weirdest comment that a person makes. Like, all you do by saying this, and I'm really saying this, and I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to be nice when I say this, okay? If you say things like this, if you support the fake communist societies, okay, as if you know what that is, as a white Westerner who's never experienced a revolution, instead of real communism, because you know what that is, you're the defining characteristic of what is or is not communism, right? Certainly not the people who went through a revolution and who have built a revolutionary society and are currently living in a communist society that they call socialist with Chinese characteristic to move towards communism, right? Certainly not those people are the people who are best equipped to define what is or is not communism. No, it's some guy living in a Western country who's never experienced a revolution and probably doesn't really know what communism actually is. But the cherry on the cake here is, why don't you move to a communist country? You can think of a lot of reasons why, right, Map? Like this to me is the most embarrassing thing that a person can say. And so I'm saying this as calmly as I can to you in this moment, in this time, so that you really understand how much you set yourself up for dismissal. That you basically just say, I don't have intelligence, I just know how to talk. And I can basically walk away from you now because of this, thinking there's a stupid person I don't need to pay attention to anymore. Right? And that's exactly what's going to happen. Because why don't I move to a communist country? Why don't I move to a country where I don't speak the language, I don't have any currency, I don't have any property, I don't have any investments, nor do I have the money to actually get into the country, nor do I have a job there. And then on top of all of that, why do I not want to abandon my own people in their time of need? So there's a handful of reasons that anybody could think about for any moment whatsoever. It takes 30 seconds to realize, and yet you feel like you have the right to say to anyone at any time, why don't you move to a communist country? So my advice to you now is to just stop talking, listen, maybe ask a question here or there, because my opinion of you is now that you are dumb. That you haven't read anything, you don't know what communism is, and you're too stupid to have an informed opinion on the point. So you got to listen to people who actually know what they're talking about, and that's not you. All right. I mean, Command Genius, I think, I disagree with the current government's position on the Cultural Revolution. Ultimately, it comes down to the opinion of the people who are living in the system, right? That if the people of China want the Cultural Revolution to continue, then they should be the ones that are supporting that and sending that through to the National People's Congress, and they're not. Right? And they're not. Again, the people of China have a 90% approval rating of what their government is doing. If they want the Cultural Revolution back, they'll get it. Right? They'll get it. Yeah, why don't you move to a capitalist country like Nigeria if you love capitalism so much? We here in the West, the moral high grounding is so ridiculous. Our system is based off of expropriation and theft. Literally, we enslave populations and get those slaves to build to get resources for us. That's straight up the nature of the capitalist system, and it's observable. It's obvious. It's very straightforward. And then we have kind of the audacity to say, why don't you go to the countries that we destroy? Yeah, fridge broke, just move. Car broke down, abandon it on the highway. Don't try to fix things. Give up. Well, and I actually think it just comes from a place of hyper individualism, right? If you're a selfish person and you only care about yourself, and you don't actually care about the well-being of anybody around you, then abandoning it makes sense, right? It's the worship of the self, right? Just do things for yourself. Don't care about your nation or your country or your people or your civilization or even humanity, right? It's just you. So steal what you can, leave, go do something, right? It's why Westerners don't care that the Israelis commit pogroms against the Palestinians, because that just makes sense. It's just how the West operates, right? You go into an area, you steal the stuff that's there, you get rid of the inconvenient aspects, such as the people who are living there, and you take their stuff, right? That's how the West operates, and that's why nobody talks about it. And if you do bring it up, and if you do talk about it, it's not that they get into this kind of state of denial about it. It's just they're just kind of exasperated that you're putting it in front of them as if they're supposed to feel bad about it. Really. That's what a lot of these conservatives and liberals are like. That you're just putting this in front of them and exhausting them with their oh my God, this guy thinks that stealing people's property is wrong. Oh. Somalia is a libertarian paradise. How capitalists don't want to go there. It's a mystery to me. Just a Man with Opinion says, I wouldn't get too hung up on it. People are going to have aversions to communism for a variety of reasons, whether you think they're legit or not. Best to just find points of agreement and move on. Who are you even talking to here, bud? Is it me? Because, like, you get that I do this for, like, a lot, right? A lot. And my position, like, if you want my serious position, Just a Man, like, some people need to hear that shit. Straight up. Like, some people need to be talked to that way. Some people need to be looked at in the eye and be told, you're acting like a baby, stop acting like a baby, shut up. Like, that's what people need. And it's really obvious that's what people need. Take a look at the success of Jordan Peterson, right? How's he gotten so popular? Because he's literally just telling people to shut up and read a book. Like, and he's a dumb moron who doesn't know anything. So can you imagine what would happen if somebody who actually knew something was walking around being like, okay, look, dummy. The book I read was written by a Chinese steelworker in the Cultural Revolution. Yeah, he's probably a Maoist, right? Look, the Maoists and the Dangists have there's a legitimate struggle there. It was a legitimate political struggle that happened. You know what, man? You know what I want? Hold on. This is what we're going to do. I want this. It's been a long time since I've done this. I'm going to do it. China Walk. Let's go. It's been a minute. Where do I want to go? I want to go somewhere like wholesome, you know? I don't want to go to their tech places. Shaoxing is nice. Let's go to Shaoxing. Yeah. Oh my god, go it. Shaoxing. I don't have an emotional stake in the struggle between the Maoists and the Dangists, the way that the Maoists and the Dangists do, right? Of course, the Dangists are a little bit more smug about it because they ended up winning, but I think that the Maoists have every reason to be critical of Dangism and that move. Right? I think they have every reason to be critical. Even in the modern era, I think they have reason to be critical. Because the fear amongst the Maoists was always a fear of regression and always a fear that China would become subservient to capital and subservient to imperial power again, and that would usher in 100 years of humiliation, another 100 years of humiliation, right? That the people who fought with Mao had experienced the 100 years of humiliation. It's a very serious and significant period of time in Chinese history, where imperial powers were basically enslaving the society, where China had become the poor man of China, the poor man of Asia, rather, right? Just the kicking boy. That even Japan was getting in on the action, and and if you have experienced that, if you've seen that kind of stuff and you've gone through that, and then you organized and you went and you got together, and the sick man of Asia, yeah, thank you, Ligand Z, and if you fought, put your life on the line, and struggled and sacrificed in order to build a new society and be rid of these imperialist powers, and then a group comes along within the Communist Party itself saying, we should do business with these Westerners. That's what we should do. That the way forward for us to build communism and the way to enrich China and the way to get forward in this circumstance that we find us in is to start doing business with the people who used to enslave us. Yeah, I would be skeptical. And so anytime I read anything about from the Maoists, I'm like, yeah, this position makes a lot of sense. This position makes a lot of sense. That it makes a lot of sense that the Maoists would be skeptical, and it makes a lot of sense that they would hold the positions that they hold and do hold, that they held and do hold. But at the end of the day, what the Dangists were fundamentally saying was, trust me, bro. That the Dangists were fundamentally saying, we acknowledge that capitalism is going to bring a certain set of societal ills. Wealth inequality will come, right? That there are going to that the class dynamic is not good or healthy for a society. That the built-in antagonism that exists between owners and workers is poison for a society, and they know it, and they're saying this. They just accepted that was the case because they saw it as a way to get wealth into their nation without having to fight a war. Remembering that at the time when the Dangists come to power, right, the Vietnam War is going on, the Korean War is going on, Laos, Cambodia, like the Americans are literally doing full-scale, huge, massive bombing campaigns on the border of China, saying they're doing it to staunch the spread of communism. Like, it is an intense period of time. And the Dangists put forward an idea that said, we can end the war, we can end these conflicts, and we can do so and enrich ourselves in the process. And this is the linchpin right here. This is the linchpin for the whole thing. While having faith in the strength of the structure of the National People's Congress and the Chinese Party, the Communist Party of China. And the truth is that the Maoists were skeptical of that. That the Maoists liked Mao. They didn't trust the structure of the National People's Congress. They trusted Mao. And what the Dangist period has shown, in my view, and what the Chinese people seem to be saying and believing, with good evidence, is that the Dangist period worked. That Deng didn't lie to anybody. That he said that the bad will come with the good. But that when the time comes, we trust that the National People's Congress and the Chinese Communist Party will do what it can to smooth all of this out and alleviate these issues as they arise. And there's evidence that that is the case. And so the strength of what's happening in China is that the structure is sound. That's the strength of it. That the National People's Congress, that what the Chinese communists built under Mao, and then through to Deng and now through to Xi Jinping, is a sound structure. And that's the real strength of Chinese communism, is that structure. Which is why I don't get too caught up on individuals. I don't get too caught up on like Maoist, Dangist, Xi Jinpingist or any of that. Like I don't get caught up in any of that because I'm more focused on the structure. Because if it's a solid structure, then it's going to stand and it's going to withstand a lot. And the Chinese society is showing that it has a strong, stable structure. Could it turn? Sure. And I think Maoists, including people in my chat, are right to be skeptical. And we should be skeptical. We should have a dollop of skepticism. But a single account, right? The person who wrote it had hundreds of interviews with people in Mao's inner circle. Right. So he had a single perspective about Chinese society that comes from Mao. Right. And again, the Maoists have every reason to be skeptical. But it's like, it's very, very difficult to hold on to the case that the Dengist period was unsuccessful for China. It's very, very difficult to hold on to that, to that. Right. Like, I'm showing one of the old school ones, and for this particular conversation, I wanted to for my own sake, but like, it's very, very difficult to hold on to the idea that the Dengist period was not successful for China. Like, it's just really, really tough. The Chinese people have a 90% approval rating of their government. The society looks, the cities look clean, modern. China is the technology leader in many, many industries. They are the world's trading partner, right? Being the number one, that's very cute what just happened, but being the number one trading partner with most of the rest of the world, being a huge in the manufacturing base, like to try to make the claim that the Dengist period was not successful, I really, really have a tough time with people who want to hold that position, because there's just you're just asking me to not look at my eyes. Really, you're just asking me not to look at my eyes. Like China is the leader in high-speed rail. They've built like 200,000 kilometers of high-speed rail in the last 20 years. Like they're building massive trade networks. They're building all like it's just I really I really have a tough time with this. Command Genius, of course a Maoist would say that, my man. I agreed that imperialism was not good, but does this mean that Britain should be hostile to Italy because the Roman Empire enslaved the Brits? How is China hostile? Mao surrounded a city with 1 million people in it and starved them to death. Mao and Hitler not all that different when you really think about it. Like, I mean, are you talking about like... So Mao fighting against literal imperialists who are invading the country, and that's the same as Hitler's war of aggression on Europe and Russia. There's just no parity there. It's just a very odd statement to make. Like, Mao is literally fighting against oppressors and against foreign imperialists. Hitler is fighting to spread the glory of Germany into Europe. Like, who were the oppressors that Hitler was fighting? Nobody is being enslaved in colonized areas, while some people are not in colonized places. That's just an incoherent statement. Yeah, the brain dead Western talking point is Mao is as bad as Hitler. Yeah, that's about as brain dead as it gets. Like Saddam Hussein. I see that we're really, just writing off imperialism and colonialism, Western chauvinist stuff. Yeah, just basically like dumb. Like, there's no other way to say it. Like, there's no nicer way to say it. There's no simple way. Like, it's just stupid. Right? It's just a dumb thing to say. like literally, you've got you got American, European, and Japanese imperialists creating, making you the poorest nation on the continent. Fighting that is the same as Hitler. Like, it's just brain dead. Like, it's just fucking brain dead. Oh, well, Command Genius, if the Business Insider said it. Like, look, Command Genius, I'm not trying to say that, like, Mao would not have continued the growth of China, but, like, Mao got old and died, right? And the baton needs to pass to somebody. And that group of people were the Dengists. Like, and the Maoists lost power within their own country, right? Like, the Chinese themselves went along with this. Like, it's not like the Chinese were. It's not like there was this huge coup that happened. It wasn't like there's this. That was Mao's intention. The trouble is that at the end of the day, Deng was more convincing. Like, this is the same conversation I have with Trotsky and Stalin. There was a huge coup when everybody got together and voted. Right? That's what the Trotskyists say about Stalin, too. Right? That huge coup that happened where everybody voted for Stalin. it's not like they are Western oligarchs that get rich off of stealing resources like oil and mining. Yeah, the billionaires in China are productive. They make stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Hold on. I want to get to the beginning of this conversation here. Do you realize how many spies and capitalist buddies are in China? Oh, yeah, for sure that's happening. I'll tell you, they are the children of the elite who have studied, worked, and been brainwashed in the West. Now, this idea, I don't see much evidence of this. Like, that's a narrative. I hear that narrative, right? But when I find myself interacting with Chinese citizens, and when I'm talking to these types of people, right, they're like, yeah, we went and studied in the West because the Western institutions were the most prominent, and you want to learn from what these guys are having to say, and then we come back to our country and try to implement stuff and try to do right by our own country. So, oh yeah. Tinker, I'm worried about billionaires just existing. Yeah, it's a danger. For sure it is. Like, just the fact that a billionaire can hire, like, a billionaire can just hire 100 people to walk around with megaphones blasting bullshit, right? They can just do that. And that by itself is a really deadly influence, right? Just the idea that a single individual can straight up just financially incentivize people to spread lies in the society, like, that by itself is a reason to be rid of billionaires. Like, we don't need like a big argument, you know? Like, that's the thing about the whole billionaire thing and people being like, they earned it and all this kind of stuff. It's like, so what if they did? Like, so what if they did? The existence of the billionaire is the problem, and it's a problem for very obvious reasons. And a very clear and obvious reason is just the very simple fact that they can hire people to be liars for them. And that's it. Like, a normal citizen can't do that, right? A normal citizen needs to go around and be convincing. If a normal citizen wants to be a liar and spread lies, then they need to at least be convincing, and they at least need to have an argument, and they at least need to present something, right? They don't have this passive influence in the society where they can just hire entire news organizations to be bullshit artists, right? Like, and you can still end up with like institutions that are full of shit, obviously. But like, at least then they've got skin in the game. At least then it's like the people are actually doing it, right? As opposed to this bullshit that's going on. I mean, Khrushchev wasn't the reason the USSR fell, but like that's sort of ascribing to the great man of theory, or the great man of history theory, right? That the great man of history theory says that like it was this single individual and his influence and all of this. Well, similarly, saying that Khrushchev was the reason the USSR fell is like an inversion of that. It's like, it's the same idea. It's just that he was so powerful and influential that he by himself was the sole reason the USSR fell. I think that there are a lot of reasons. And to me, the number one reason why I think the USSR finally falls is that the statement I make is that the communists defeated the Nazis, but fascism defeated communism. That the spirit and the energy of the nation was depleted in that war. They lost 25 million people. It took them years to rebuild. And while it was happening, they were experiencing like a betrayal of their former allies. I think that the Soviet Union, like most of the decisions that get made after Stalin dies, make a lot of sense once you put it into your head that the leadership does not want to be invaded by Nazis again. I think once you get that in your head, like once that exists in your mind in a serious way, then everything crystallizes and everything makes a lot of sense. That the decisions that were made after Stalin's death were not ideological. They weren't even financial. They really weren't. Like it's not though the corrupt leadership wanted to vote in order to enrich their own pockets and try to get like all of that narrative, right? Like maybe, but those people experienced like what those people experienced was a tragedy on a scale that we cannot comprehend. Like World War II was a tragedy that we cannot comprehend. And I am more or less of the opinion that the Russians, and certainly the Russian leadership, came to see the Soviet Union as a threat to them because it was incentivizing their enemies to attack them. And that like the Nazi attack, the capitalist attack, was explicitly because the Soviets were were communist. And so if the goal is to not be attacked anymore, well then it's probably a good strategy to drop it. And like, I'm not defending Khrushchev by any stretch of the imagination, right? But it's not it's not great men, like this great men theory and this individual idea. Like these are not like these individual men are not gods. Khrushchev doesn't single-handedly have the ability to set the USSR back, right? Like you need consensus. You need people around you. You need the people themselves. And I think that the spirit of the post-Soviet era can really be encapsulated very simply and straightforwardly with, boy, I hope Nazis don't attack us. Like, I don't understand why this is not playing. Like, for real. Like, I feel like I'm talking to a wall. Like 25 million Russian citizens were killed in a massive war where the country watched 2 nuclear bombs go off to the country right next door to it. And I just don't know why that's not playing. Like why is that just being sidestepped around? Like why is that 25 million people dead, literal cities reduced to rubble. We've got the pictures of Stalingrad. But no, it's Khrushchev. I disagree. World War II, again, 25 million Russians died in World War II. It was an enormous catastrophe, a massive catastrophe. A life-changing, life-altering, nation-destabilizing event. I'm literally telling you it as we are speaking. That 25 million people died in Russia. Right? Like, I just don't think you're considering the basic humanity of these people. Like it's not a game of like Heart of Iron or something. Right? Like people have souls and spirits. People have emotions. They experience tragedy. Like, and 25 million people dying is going to have a scar. And it's going to leave a scar on your society. Just no doubt. Just no doubt. I don't know why anyone would pretend anything other than that. Literally, you walked into a city that used to be there, like the one that we're looking at right now, but now it's rubble. It's going to leave a scar. Right. So post-World War II, very quickly, you have people who are trying to get into a position so that Nazis don't invade them again. Right? Like, I don't know why that's not playing. Like, do you think, oh, it was only immediately then? Okay. I'm surprised that they waited so long. Like, I'm surprised that it took so long for them to begin instituting policies to ensure that Nazis weren't going to invade them again. Like, what's so strange? What's so strange about this conversation that I'm having? What's so strange about what's going on right here is that, like, to me, post-World War II, it's very clear that the goals of the Russians moving forward is to ensure that the Nazis don't attack them again. And that's priority number one. But that you don't seem to think that it's a priority at all. Like, that's what's so strange about this. That's what's so unusual. Like, very clearly, in my view, the Russians absolutely are interested. Yes, look, look, dude, I mean, if you're not going to create a distinction between Albania and the Soviet Union, then I just don't know, dude. Like, I just don't know. You know? Like, yeah, the entire world has a great debt to pay for the Russians and Soviets for defeating the most powerful fascist war machine that ever existed. Yeah, and baked potato, this is the reason why Western leftists get a bad rep. They have no international solidarity with their fellow leftists. They fall for propaganda and say dumb shit like China is imperialist. I'm going to block these people, stop interacting with them. You know who you are. I mean, you do you, baked potato. I can't say no. Like, it's fine, but everybody's on their own path, myself included. Everybody's on their own path, and everybody's trying to figure this out, right? And it's we're all sharpening each other, one hopes. And, like, yeah, man, this has just really got me thinking. Like, I just don't know what it would be like. Like, 25 million people is essentially the population of Canada at that time. It would be as if someone came into the country and just killed everybody. That's what the Russians experienced. That they lost, like, geez, what was the population of Russia during that time? Population of Russia in 1940. So they lose, like, 20% of their populace, right? Like 18% of their populace in that war. Like, I really don't care for this argument that says communism failed. That it was very clearly abandoned. And it was abandoned because of the threat of Nazism. That the Nazis convinced the Soviets that if you continue with this communist idea, we will do this to you. And we will drop nuclear bombs. And we will kill 20% of your populace. We will burn down your cities. We will send people over here. We will do it. And we have done it, and we'll do it again. And from my perspective, the Russians from World War II on were moving forward with a policy of appeasement. Really. Yeah, Map, I mean, I'll need a source for that. What's your source? You got a picture of it? Here we got map goers. Yes, 25 million Russians lost, but then you ignore 70 million in China because the people working 24 hours a day in the fields, their name replaced by numbers, are imperialist capitalists. 70 million people, Map. Population of China, 1940. So 70 million people, be about like, it's not 10%. Let's say 5%. 5% of the population, and we don't have a picture of it. Oh, okay. You have plenty of sources. You got a name? Oh, sorry. Did it not bring up the 1940? 1940 population China. Oh, population history. I just like to bring clarity to it. Let's see. Period. So, oh geez, yeah. People. So let's say 1950. Oh yeah, so 500 million. So it's actually way worse. Like 70 million people. That's like 15%. Little, maybe 12, 13%. Right. So 10% of the population gets killed, and we don't have a picture of it. We don't have anybody commenting on it. Right? Like we don't have a politician talking about it while it's happening. Not only Chinese, but also American or Western. There's no diplomat. There's no advisor, ambassador. There's no China watcher. There's no quote. Right? There isn't a picture of it. There isn't footage of it. There isn't a refugee crisis. That's one of my favorites. Right? There's just no refugee crisis. Like, what's the evidence of this? And when you actually look into what the actual evidence is, it's straight up a couple of statisticians messing with stats data. Essentially just saying that there must have been a famine that killed a bunch of people because we've messed with some numbers in such a way so that there's some missing people here that should have been there. Well, nah, fuck off. Let you gather the pictures. You could just tell me what to search, right? It should be really easy, dude. Like this should be really, really easy, right? Real simple and easy stuff. There should be an Oxford scholar who has published a book, right? There should be a Harvard scholar who has published a book, right? Like this should be really, 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 really easy. We should have quotes. We should have, Wikipedia. Great. So we should have like quotes. We should have, genuine scholarship, not stupid Wikipedia articles where anybody can edit it, including the CIA. Like, we should have like really genuine, serious scholarship. Like, you should be able to say a name. If you're going to say 70 million people died, you should be able to say one name to direct me to a book. Red Scarf Girl. Convincing. Like, super convincing, dude. Red Scarf Girl. Got it. Is that like an OnlyFans name? Like, if I were to direct someone to the history of Nazi Germany, right? If I was talking to like a Holocaust denier, for example, I would direct people to William Shire's The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, right? I would say, you Holocaust denial. Okay, what about Mein Kampf, right? Like, I would be giving people actual sources that are serious. Right? This Red Scarf Girl, right? So, okay. Peng. I mean, you've already shown yourself to be pretty unreliable here, dude. From defense minister, he was a poor peasant family, received several years. Like, how much do you want to bet that that quote is about him him walking into some imperialist territory? Peng was one of the who supported Mao's suggestion. Yeah. So he worked with Mao. Oh, is this guy one of the group of 7? Supported Peng's military following Peng was arrested. Yeah. Okay. You're pretty dingy. Okay, but like, so you got a name and a quote. World War II, People's Liberation Army, defense minister. So this is the defense minister. Fall from power. Okay. Oh, and then it's going to do the... But he opposed it. Yeah. Yeah, he opposed it because there was problems with it. Yeah. Like, nobody's denying that there wasn't, like, an issue. Right? Like, this is the classic fascist thing to do. Like, this is the classic fascist thing to do. Take a struggle that the communists are dealing with and then say 70 billion people died. Okay, bud. Like, this is nice. Like, you're just on, no, but you're just on Google, dude. Like, this is just copy pasta is what you're doing, right? Like, this is what this is. Do you have the Harvard Scholar? Like, what you're doing is you're taking people who are associated... Yeah, thanks, bud. Do you have the Harvard Scholar? There should be a Harvard Scholar, an Oxford Scholar. No, of course not, because he doesn't exist. That's the point. You're the one making the claim. Like, what you're doing is you're going on to like, it's obvious what you're doing right now, dude, is you're going onto Google, and you're going onto a little Nazi website that you go to, and you're finding the, like, quotes to be like, throw these in front of people and make them defend it. So, great. Cute quotes. Very sweet. Lovely. Well done. Go congratulate your Nazi buddies. Do you have the Harvard Scholar who has written the book on this event? Fantastic. Do you have the Harvard Scholar that has written the book on this event? A Harvard Scholar. Great. Well, what's his name? Like, this is the thing with these guys. Like when the British did the Bengali famine and killed a bunch of Bengali people, we literally have Winston Churchill saying, kill them like rats. Like, we literally have Winston Churchill saying out loud that the intention is to kill these people. Right? Like, you literally are showing me quotes from, like, military leaders saying, like, this, I saw horrors and all this. It's like, yeah, probably. They were fighting an imperialist war. But they're not associated to anything. You're just saying that they are, and I don't trust you. I've got no reason to trust you. You're a very dumb person who says very dumb things. I have no reason to trust you whatsoever. So if you're just going to, like, throw up a quote that you pulled from a website and then act as though I need to defend this, well, what are these, like, so military personnel were commenting on some event that happened. Okay, great. Yeah. Like, again, nobody's denying, like, what you're doing right now is showing me the scholars who are critical of Mao, who definitely exist. Right? And that's fine. There's plenty of these people that do this. Right? Especially The Great Leap Forward. You know what happens when you read these guys' books? Right? Like, you know what happens when you read these guys' books? They just glaze by this famine number. Right? Nobody is denying that there was not a decline in the amount of grain that was produced. It was obviously a disruptive time, and it obviously had an impact. Did it kill 70 million people? Not even a section on it. Wow. This is impressive stuff, my man. This is impressive. And, like, I love it. You went onto Google and you typed in what I was asking for and you found the guy. Congratulations. Now go read his work. You'll find very quickly that your claim is unverified. Yeah. And, like, this is the other part of it that the capitalists ignored, right? And that dude was a British MP and BBC broadcaster. Yeah. And, like, the other part of it that gets completely ignored is how you'll notice that a famine happened and then it doesn't happen ever again. Because the communists experience a famine and then they stop the famine from happening again. They stop the cycle of famines from occurring. As if there's been no such thing as a famine in America. As if there's been no such thing as a famine in Europe. Right? Like, it's this very odd conversation. Like, dude, I get it. You know how to Google. Like, you do. You know, congratulations. Like, you know how to Google. None of these guys are going to say that 70 million people died in a famine. Like, they're not. Like, you are showing me scholars who are critical of Mao, just as Deng was critical of Mao. Right? No, oh goodness, that proves that 70 million people died. Like congratulations, you found Google. Now read the stuff. Now read it. Like, Jesus Christ, man. It's exhausting. It's just exhausting, man. This fucking, like, copy pasta, go find Google shit. Go actually read. Go actually read the stuff. Go actually look at it. You know what you're going to see? You're going to see guys being like, yeah, it was disruptive and there was a lot of trouble going on and people were critical. Deng himself was critical, right? Well, what's the name of that book? Like, what's the name of that book then? I've read a book from an eyewitness that had thousands of people tell her this happened. Okay, what's the name of that book? Mao, the Unknown Story. Mao, the Unknown Story. Usually you can just do, like, debunks in real time. Thanks, Command Genius. You got to it. You got to it. Here we go. The first thing that I do is I go to the criticism section. Command Genius. Oh my God, Mao, the Unknown Story is made by a Nazi. Thank you. Chang and Halliday's book has been strongly criticized by various academics. In December 2005, The Observer stated that many knowledgeable academics of the field have questioned the factual accuracy of some of Chang and Halliday's claim, noticeably their selective use of evidence, questioning their stance in the matter, among other criticisms. The article also said that Chang and Halliday's critics did not deny Mao's monstrous actions. David S.G. Goodman, professor of Chinese politics at the University of Sydney, wrote in the Pacific Review that the book, like other examples of historical revisionism, implied that there had been a conspiracy of academics and scholars who have chosen not to reveal the truth. China invited other group of specialists to give assessments, wrote that misread sources, use them selectively, use them out of context, otherwise trim and bend them to cast Mao as an unrelentingly bad light. Said that the book is not a history in the accepted sense of a reasoned historical analysis. It reads like an entertaining Chinese version of a TV soap opera. Surely the depiction is overdrawn. The 2009 anthology Was Mao Really a Monster? The Academic Response to Chang and Halliday's Mao, The Unknown Story. Brings together 14th mostly critical. Yuck, yuck, yuck. Unlike the worldwide commercial media, most provincial commentary has been disapproving. Criticized it on Mao's conspicuous imperfections, exaggerating them to fantastical heights, advancing moral criteria for political leaders that would never apply to a Roosevelt or a Kennedy. Ali accused the book of including unsourced and unproven claims, including archival material from Mao's political opponents in Taiwan and the Soviet Union whose reliability are disputed. According to many reviewers of Mao the Unknown Story, the story told therein is unknown because Chang and Halliday subsequently fabricated it or exaggerated it into existence. I'm just reading your sources. This is a critique of your sources, my man. Like, this is your source. Here's the critique right here, criticisms. Right? You can see it. It's easy to do. Right? I think my favorite of all this here is Historica Rebecca Carl summarizes, according to many reviewers of Mao the Unknown Story, the story told therein is unknown because Chang and Halliday subsequently substantially fabricated it or exaggerated it into existence. Like, and again, nobody's denying that the Great Leap Forward didn't come with hardship. Like, no one's denying that. Obviously it did. For Mao and the Maoists and for the Chinese Communist Party generally, it was an extension of the war. Right? It was them continuing the war, but instead of them fighting imperialists, it was them fighting their conditions. Yeah, who denied the Great Leap Forward, my man? Like, you've just shut your brain off, because this is what happens whenever you just point out, like, I understand you're embarrassed. Like, I get it. You're embarrassed. You put forward a book. Congratulations, by the way. Most people don't. Right? So good for you. It's in seriousness. Like, I'm not trying to be facetious. Like, most people don't. Right? Most people just have swallowed the propaganda whole. They've just read a couple of articles and talked about it with their buddies. Right? You've gone and actually read a book. So you should actually be congratulated for that. I want you to know that. Okay? My suggestion to you in this moment is to use this moment as a learning opportunity for yourself, which is to not uncritically absorb information, right? To not uncritically just read something and then go, wow, that's true. That there are obvious criticisms of this book that you can find very easily, and there's even response to that criticism. So there's an ongoing debate. So it's clearly unsettled at the very least, right? Like, it's not settled. There's clearly an ongoing conversation that is still happening. Very obviously, that's the case. So my advice to you is, like, it's fine to read this stuff, but, like, maybe know how it stands, right? Maybe know how it stands in the discourse. Maybe know where it is, because this book No, of course there's criticisms of Mao. He's one of the great leaders of history. Like, of course there's going to be criticisms of Mao. There's criticisms of Alexander the Great. There's criticisms of Genghis Khan. I mean, Genghis Khan, a bad example. But there's criticisms of the pharaohs. There's criticisms of Queen Victoria. Right? There's criticisms of George Washington. The great leaders of history are always going to be criticized. Always. 100% of the time. Doesn't mean that they're evil psychos. Right? Like, I mean, we have world leaders like Washington, who was a literal slaveholder. Right? And we hold him to less criticism than Mao. Yeah, the entire intention of this chatter is to prove that Mao is worse than Hitler. Yeah, it's pretty embarrassing. Mao was also a slaveholder. And goodbye. There just comes a point where it becomes obvious that the person is too stupid to talk to anymore. Like, Mao was also a slaveholder. Like, I feel like we just had a big conversation with the Falun Gong guy. Like... like... Come on, dude. Like, come on, man. Oh boy. Like, it's tough for me to be mad at people like that, you know, because it flows into the unholy trinity of the capitalist death cult, right? Which is, as you guys know, the worship of money, the worship of the self, and the worship of the hierarchy or the patriarchy. I'm still somewhat struggling with that. But, oh yeah, good point, Heltosis. I'll get on it. I'm just tired all the time. This guy is just so convinced that his claim is true. And why? Why would he be convinced that his claim is true? Because Daddy said so. That's it. Like, that's it. That Daddy says so, and what Daddy says is true, and Daddy says I'm a good little boy, and as long as I work hard and as long as I work hard and do what I'm told, right, everything's going to work out for me and I'll achieve success. But I just got to do what Daddy says and listen to what Daddy says. And so when people are confronted with the falseness of what Daddy says, which is constant, like it's gotten to the point now where it's almost impossible not to be confronted by it because it's so obvious. Like this hospital story is exactly this, right? This hospital story is exactly this. It's the idea that we're just supposed to believe that Hamas bombed their own hospital because Daddy said so. And it's so obviously false. It's just so obviously false. But a lot of people go along with it because Daddy said so. And when you're confronted with evidence that shows that you're wrong, right? People go into like a mental fritz. People go into like a and they lose their fucking mind and they lose their cool. And in this particular case, we just watched a guy go from like the normal standard claim to getting like openly embarrassed, right? He provided a source that was just like literally on the Wikipedia page debunked. to straight up double down Mao had slaves. And like the CPC abolished slavery before the KMT. What were they talking about? Yeah. And if you were to follow them up, right? If you were to follow them up on that story, Command Genius, you know what you'd end up with? You'd end up with another book that was on the Wikipedia page debunked. Like there's a mental block and there's a mental fritzing that happens. And it's the same mental fritzing. It's the same difficulty and it's the same embarrassment and it's the same struggle that a person has growing up as a child and coming to terms with the fact that their parents are not gods. That their parents are not only fallible, but also caught up in the system as well. That they don't have the influence and the power and the strength that you think that they do. And they are perfectly capable of falling for all kinds of traps and for all kinds of things. And that a big part of growing up, and what I actually say is the distinction between an adult and a child, is acknowledging the humanity of your own parents. As soon as you acknowledge that your parents are completely fallible and absolutely, and then that makes you an adult. And in the same way, you can't advance in international politics. You can't advance at this level until you acknowledge that that also extends to what they said about their ideological enemies and other countries. Like, you have to let go of the idea that what daddy says is always true. And you have to become skeptical of this stuff. Because there's a lot of people who can say anything. And you also live in a society. You live in a society where the wealthiest people are heavily incentivized to send around the worst material. Vitor Beniti, hi comrade, this cartoonist Lafitte, he is Brazilian. Amazing. Yeah, it's in the corner there. From Mint Press News. I just thought it captured it. Right? It just captured it. Yeah, my source is Mein Kampf by famous Harvard scholar Adolphus Hitlerus. Like if you're going to read a book, right, you should at least, and if you're going to base your belief on that book, you should probably know what the criticisms of that book are. And if you go and look at the criticisms and you see people being like, oh, there was a slight inaccuracy here, you know, he had this one position that was somewhat debatable, and we could have a debate about that, right? Like, then that's normal. That's the normal criticism. Then you're in good territory, right? Because you can always criticize someone's work. Like, for example, when they did a hit piece against Matt Taibbi, right? When they did that hit against Matt Taibbi, what they did is they found the minor inaccuracies that always exist in these types of works, and then they blew it up to pretend as though that discredited the entire work. It's a pretty common tactic. But the truth is that all works have minor inaccuracies, right? That's why things exist in kind of a bandwidth. And if somebody says something, like whenever I make a claim based on numbers, for example, and then somebody corrects those numbers, right, in a way to be like, haha, got you, I just say, oh, okay, and I just go along with them. Because we're probably both inaccurate, is the truth. And so there's just no point stopping the conversation and having a big debate about it, right? If it's 50 million or 20 million, okay. Okay, moving on, right? And but if you read the criticisms, like if you read the criticisms and people are like, this is a fucking work of fiction, there's no basis for any of this. They're literally omitting evidence, not creating a false narrative. right? Then you definitely should not be putting that forward. Like, you definitely should not be putting that forward. And to me, that's the learn. Like, that's the learn. That's the victory out of all of that we just went through together. The victory out of all of that is to see very clearly that if you are going to approach a subject, or if you're going to approach a book or something, you can just look at the criticisms. They're easy to find. Like, people want to criticize, especially scholars. Like, scholars exist in order to criticize each other's works. The capitalists need it to be true, is the thing. Like, they need something. They need to cling on to something. Because the criticisms of capitalism are so easy, right? Like, Adolf Hitler and the Holocaust are easy, right? Extremely well-trodden, extremely verified, extremely obvious to find. Like, an extremist capitalist reaction to a threat, to a serious threat, including nuclear bombardment. And so the capitalists need something that shows that their enemies are just as bad. Because the capitalists need to convince people that the solution to capitalism is just as bad, at least just as bad. And so there's no point in moving forward on something that's just as bad. And so they cling on and they spread around these absolute nonsense narratives that are just fictions that don't exist. But people are so exhausted and they don't have the time. And it's just basic Goebbels stuff, right? Just keep saying it, keep saying it, keep saying it, keep saying it, and then it'll be true. You have to convince the rube masses that Hitler is linked with capitalism in the first place. Yeah, because they always hate you with the Nazis were socialist BS. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Like, it's amazing. Like, capitalist industrialists literally funded Adolf Hitler. It would be as if Elon Musk and Warren Buffett and those guys were literally funding Hitler. But we're supposed to be convinced that Hitler was a socialist because he took over a socialist party. And then distorted it, leading to the mass resignment of the people, the leadership of that party. Like, that's what's wild. I like that, Command Genius. Nazi stands for National Socialist. All right, bro, eat up. It's called a urinal cake. Like, the level of straw grasping is absolutely incredible, right? The level of straw grasping is absolutely incredible, but they have to, right? They don't have a moral or philosophical or historical or economic leg to stand on any longer, right? They've lost the ability to exist within the factual. So they have to do this. Because they got to protect daddy. Right? They got to. And it can't be the case that they all recognize that they're the bad guys. Right? They're obviously the good guys, right? And how do they know that they're the good guys? Because we say so. Because I am a good guy. Sure, when things are bad, or when we do stuff that's bad, it's justifiable, right? 5, no TV on Twitch. You collecting flags or your favorite? Oh no, the name of the channel is the Canadian Commie, man. So, Canadian Commie. Straightforward. Straightforward. Oof. What a strange time to be alive, you know? We're coming to the end of this one. I only learned that not long ago about the National Socialist Party name and just assumed it was that kind of tactic. Like, oh, hey guys, look, it turns out that genocidal mass murderers are also liars. Like, that's really what makes this line of argumentation about the National Socialist Nazi Party argument so childish. Right? And is that the people that say it, they're just revealing how gullible they are. Like, you're willing to stand up and acknowledge that this guy's a murderous, genocidal psychopath, but he always tells the truth 100% of the time. And he certainly wouldn't use socialism as a way to deceive people into believing that he's their ally. Right? Yeah, it's so difficult to believe that people would make this argument because it's so childish. Like, you have to be a gullible, naive person to actually think along these lines. To actually be like, National Socialists? They're socialists! As if a person who's willing to round up 6 million Jews isn't also willing to lie. Like, it's really staggering that anybody would make this sort of claim and say this and then believe that they should be taken seriously as a thinker. Right? Like, if I was having a conversation with somebody, like, let's say Charlie Kirk. Like, if I was having a conversation with somebody like that and they dropped that, the whole conversation would become about that. And I would just be like, so why are you so gullible and naive? Like, why do you think a genocidal mass murderer is not also a liar? Like, why do you think Hitler was telling the truth when he made this National Socialist claim? Like, what's got you so convinced? Because usually what credible thinkers do and what intelligent people do is they take a look at people's actions and how they act to determine whether or not what they say has validity or truth. That if a person is going around killing people and stealing from people, then chances are good they're lying. Right? Or if they say one thing and do another, chances are good they're a liar. And that should just be well understood by reasonable adults who have brains in their heads. Like, it's just such an embarrassing thing to say out loud. It's just such an embarrassing thing to say out loud. Convinced that China is not communist, China is capitalist. Especially after the industrial reforms of the 1980s and the 1990s. So, and we have people in my chat who think the same way, mate. So I think that it's healthy to have this discourse, and I did just have this talk, so I'm just going to go through my position very quickly. I tend to, the number one thing that I look at is how are the people of China talking about it, and how are the people of China thinking about it, and what are the people of China going along with. And there's a great Harvard study. I always bring it up because to me it's the number one. It is the linchpin. This is the linchpin for how I think about it, and I'll be very explicit about it. There's a Harvard study. I'll happily show it to you. That the people of China, their approval of their government is as high as 90%. That the people of China's approval of their own government is as high as 90%. And so, if you are a communist saying, China's actually capitalist, well, then you are basically conceding ground to the capitalists and giving the capitalists a win. You are saying, the Chinese capitalists love their capitalist system. And so any capitalist anywhere would say, then we should do capitalism. Right? What the people think is not the state of things. My counter to this is that the people of China probably have a better idea as to what's going on in their country than we do. Like, the idea that our perspective is stronger than the Chinese people's perspective is Western chauvinism. Just full stop. And I'm not saying that to be insulting, right? But it's true. that the people of China probably have a better perspective on what's going on in their own country than we do. And it's odd for us to pretend otherwise. And the actions are different is what you just said. So look, here's starting with the idea that the Chinese people are happy with what's going on, and that the Chinese government calls itself socialist with Chinese characteristics, moving towards communism, which the people of China expect, and they expect to see change, and they expect to see movement in that direction. The major criticism, and you talk about the industrial reforms of the 80s and the 90s, right? Dangism is what that's sort of known as, Dangism. The idea that the Chinese should open up their borders to foreign investment, and that the Chinese should go to work for the West, basically, make all our stuff, right? Like, the Dangists were fully aware of what that was going to do. The question is, who's in the driver's seat? Has China been taken over by the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie? Or is China still governed by the Chinese Communist Party, by the Communist Party of China? Are the people able to have a voice in the National People's Congress? Do their representatives respond to them? Or do their representatives work exclusively for the benefit of capital? And it's very, very difficult, I think, to create a case that says the Command Genius, communism is when no wealth, right? Capitalism is when poverty, right? Communism is when poor. Like, I'm with you on the garishness, don't get me wrong. Like, I find it to be gaudy and garish, but communism is when poor. And I'm more or less of the opinion that the Dangists were very straightforward, that they didn't lie about what they expected to see happen, that what they expected to see happen, in fact, did happen, and now Xi Jinping and his crew are moving forward with the policies that Deng was sort of hoping they would move forward with. That what this period has really shown is the strength of the National People's Congress. China has a lot of millionaires, yep, as Deng predicted. Right? That let some people get rich first, and is sort of the quote. And the idea is for the Chinese now, and again, I think it's completely reasonable to have a critical eye. Is to have a critical eye. And Resist Colonizers writes, communism is when billionaires get arrested and executed. I mean, you're referring, this is actually a great thing to point out, right, in this conversation, is that, like, who's in the driver's seat and how do they act? So in America, in 2008, when the financial collapse happened, right, when the housing market collapsed, when there was that grift that happened and we all lost a whole bunch of money and the economy collapsed over it. Well, what happened? How did the system respond? Well, it bailed out the billionaires. It gave them billions of dollars. And that was the response. And the people who got fucked over were the working class, as always. And the billionaires literally got bailed out. And the narrative ever since has been, oh, we can do what we like because we'll get bailed out. And so we don't need to have a stable government. We don't need to have a stable economy. We don't need to make good decisions. We'll always get bailed out. In China, something similar happened, where the stock market of China, a bunch of financiers did a housing scandal, collapsed the economy. So what was the response? Well, the Communist Party of China rounded those guys up, put them on trial, and then executed some of them. Who's in the driver's seat? Who's in the driver's seat? Is it capital or is it the proletariat? Is it that people vote for representatives to go to the National People's Congress and then those representatives act on behalf of the populace? Or do those representatives act on behalf of capital? I think it's very difficult to make the case that the representatives of the National People's Congress are not acting out of concern and consequence for the people of China. I think that the people of China have come to expect that their government will respond to them. I think the people of China like that their government responds to them. And I think that they know that their government is doing things in order to improve their quality of life. And it's very difficult to make the case that the Chinese people have not had an improvement to the quality of their life. I think that's a very difficult claim to make. And the goal, of course, like the thing that I always point out, right, is that the Marxist meme has always been seize the means of production. Well, the Dangists didn't seize the means of production from the West. They traded for it. That they showed pretty clearly that they understood the system of capitalism better than the capitalists. That China now has the means of production, and in exchange, they just had to make stuff for America for a little bit. Let's be real, the government of China is hugely corrupted. They're all in behalf on their own benefit. I don't know that I understand that comment, but again, the people of China don't think so. Like, not only through this Harvard study was people's expectation of the corruption part, did people have sort of a high, it was like 50-60% of people thought that their government was not corrupt, and that number has increased over time. That the corruption and the influence of corrupting capitalism has actually diminished over time from the perspective of the people who are being governed by it. And again, those are the people who I think that we should listen to most predominantly in the conversation. That our opinion of what's going on in China matters far less than theirs. Yeah. And this is another thing, actually, Resist Colonizers bringing up. There was a period in the early 2000s where corruption was a serious issue, but Xi Jinping ran on a platform of decorrupting the system, made serious issues to root out that corruption, executed many corrupt government officials, while the West politicians have legalized bribery as lobbying. Yeah, hundreds of millions of people raised out of poverty, but yeah, the government doesn't care about anyone but themselves. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, and you can have a conversation about the legitimacy of execution. I think that's a conversation that's worth having. But it does show you very clearly a commitment to doing something about it. A commitment to actually doing something. And meanwhile, the West has like literally legalized corruption. Like, our system is legal corruption. You can just give money to politicians and have them do what you want. And that's how the system actually works. So if you want to talk about corruption, like the very fact that there's a debate or a negotiation about the degree to which the Chinese system is or is not corrupt is heads and shoulders above what's happening in the system of capital, where it's obviously corrupt. Like, it's so obviously corrupt, right? Like, here in the West, does anybody think that the system is not corrupt? Like, who's the person walking around being like, yeah, this system's completely fine, but yeah, everybody responds to my wishes for sure. Like, we literally have Princeton coming out with studies saying that our system does not respond to us at all. Like, the opinion of the population has literally zero impact on what actually happens. No TV says, not saying the West is not corrupted, but is prospective, I see, is pretty equal, with the difference that the militant organization of China is more evident. I mean, China wants its... I mean, dude, like, what are you talking about? Like, America is currently invading, like, Ukraine, Afghanistan. Well, no longer Afghanistan. They just pulled out of Afghanistan. But Iraq, Somalia, Syria, like, within the last 20 years, they've been in, like, Afghanistan, as I said, tons of sections of Africa. Like, but China's more militant? How? How is China more militant? Is it because they show their military to a country that's actively going around destroying everybody? Like, what? Like, for real, what are you talking about? Yeah, FDR did anti-corruption. That doesn't mean it's socialist. Yeah. China not getting rid of all of its billionaires means it is reformist. I mean, that was always the argument, right? Like, the argument is that China has to go down this reformist path. Like, the more and more I talk about it, the more I see that it's like, this is the path that it was forced on. That the policies, like, the alternative is war, right? Like, that is the alternative. And that's something that I don't see a lot of kind of dawning awareness about, which is that, but like, the alternative is war. Like, you're framing it as if the alternative is a perfect utopia of communism, right? But that's not true. The alternative is war. And if the alternative is war, right? Well, to avoid war, you got to make decisions. The alternative is not war, except all the bombing right on your border, right? Like, come on, man. Like, come on. Like, there comes a point where you're hitting a wall here. Yeah, the de-escalation of all that bombing on the borders, right? Like, the bombing of Laos and Cambodia and Vietnam and Korea, all that de-escalation, right? Like, tough sell, my man. Tough sell. That when Mao comes to the end of his tenure, there's very significant things happening on the border. Very significant. Very significant. And so, to pretend as though the idea that Mao had was going to result in something other, the 1972 visit by Richard Nixon to China was an example of de-escalation by the Maoists. That's like literally the beginning of the Dangus period, my man. Like, let's get our dates completely correct. Like, when does Mao leave power? So 76 is when he died. And he's in office until 76. Like, it was around the, yeah, so transition. So it's a transitionary period. Like, I'm just really great. So I'm just really struggling with like, I don't understand. Right, because it's a transition. Because the country is transitioning away from Maoism towards Dangism. And so it makes sense that there was this fellow who was kind of in between the two, kind of trying to appease both parties, right? And that there is this upward surge, this upward swing. And that, yeah, great, because Mao acknowledges that there's this war going on. We'd like to see this war come to an end. So let's talk to the leader of the place. Let's have the leader come into China and we'll talk about an end to this. And what's the agreement? How do we reach a deal here? Yeah, and Liga de Z, I think, is hitting on this great man of history kind of idea, right? Mao acknowledged it and de-escalated it in a different way than the Dengis with his magic wand, right? Like, Mao's not a superhero. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't have magic powers, dude. Like, that it's very clear that the Nixon visit is a beginning of an understanding between the West and the East of the arrangement that ultimately gets to be known as Dangism. Right? That China will go to work for the West. And through this process, China no longer makes itself a threat, they believe, to the West. That it's a strategy of appeasement. Right? It's a strategy of appeasement. I mean, I'm sure that he personally was. Again, Mao is not God. He does not have superpowers. He cannot dictate the fate of 1 billion people. Yeah, I mean, I just think that there's a lot of veneration happening, if you understand what I mean. I mean, Command Genius is a young man. He's figuring things out. I think that is magical thinking, Command Genius. Like, I do. I think that the choice was to follow the path of appeasement or to follow the path of war. And that you are presenting a case that, first of all, doesn't exist, right? That this magical event doesn't exist, right? So you can make whatever narrative you like about it. Is somewhat my point, right? You can just create whatever narrative you like and then say would've, should've, could've, it could have been this way and all that kind of stuff. Well, it's not. That the West literally was doing bombing campaigns on the border of China, literally, and likely would have continued it. Business Insider. This is going to be like the Israeli thing again, yeah? What, oh, in the article section, my bad. I'm getting tired. Getting tired. A new economic study says China could grow more quickly by 2036 if Chairman Mao's policies were brought back. So these sorts of articles, I immediately like to point out that, like, chances are very good that the Chinese themselves are talking about this. Like, if we're talking about it, the Chinese themselves are likely talking about it. Outside of China, Mao Zedong's time in power is generally remembered as a period of economic catastrophe. Yeah, on purpose. We try really hard to do that. With failed collectivization policies leading to turmoil and famine. Good start. Mao ruled China from 1949 until 1976, when he died. As a chief of the Chinese Communist Party, he ushered in an extreme state control of the economy. But according to a recently published economic research paper, the return of Maoist policies and the total abolition of the private sector wouldn't be too much of a problem for Chinese GDP growth in the years ahead. Like, that was always the plan. Right? Like, that was always the plan. Right? Was to allow foreign capital in and then to have that foreign capital dissipate and to have the capital control go away. Like, it was always the plan. So, like, if this article is basically going to say they should do the plan, then yeah. Like, yeah, dude. I just feel like you're getting, like, all tied up in this kind of veneration of this individual. Right. Because there was a war, my man. Like, Command Genius, dude. Like, this is getting exhausting. This is getting exhausting. War matters a lot. War matters a lot. War matters a lot. What, and you think the Americans are just going to go away? Like, you think the Americans are just going to go home and be like, we sure showed those commies. There they are over there continuing to be commies. We really sure showed them. Well, time to continue ignoring the Chinese communists that we've literally spent a decade terrorizing. Well, you think they're just going to go away? Yeah, okay. Nice thought. Nice idea. Nice theory. Right? If I'm a Chinese citizen living in Kunming or Qingjing or Nanking or Nanning or Maoming or any of these places, right? Watching Hanoi get bombed again, right? If I'm over here on Shanghai looking across the water, seeing planes flying overhead, right? Just carpet bombing over and over again. Just watching my sons and daughters defend this border, seeing the refugee crisis just flooding up. Watching my cousins and my neighbors just absolutely getting completely decimated. The absolute crisis in Laos and Cambodia and Vietnam, not to mention the other one going on up here. I'm in Shangcheng watching just people flee for my life, right? Hey, can we have peace? Hey, can we have peace? Hey, can we have peace? How do we get peace? Where's the peace? And the agreement pretty clearly is, oh, cool, we will stop carpet bombing on your border to stop this narrative of ending the staunching the threat of communism. If you work for us. Oh, you're not working for us. And, like, that's a pretty paper-thin thing to hang your hat on. The Americans will never come in here. We'll just nuke them. So you're just living in a constant state of utter terror. You're just living in total terror 100% of the time. How about, crazy thought, no? How about no? Look, I understand why you look at Mao and these guys and think to yourself, I wish it had been better. Well, tough. Tough. Too bad. Tough shit. Like, war. destruction, death, maiming, scarification, psychic damage, the unleashing of an unholy hell that you have to watch and witness, and you have to experience the militarization of your society. You have to go through the militarization, and forget about liberation. Forget about the liberation of communism. You're living in a militant state that's constantly at war, dealing with the fact that there's just carpet bombing happening on your borders. Constantly. Just a never-ending sea of death that you get to watch. Peace, please. Oh, I have to work for capitalists? Okay. We get it. You like Mao. The people of China liked Mao. The people of China like Mao. But if the argument is, oh, we could have continued standing against American imperialism with no consequence, get the fuck right out of here. Get the fuck right out of here. The Americans are bloodthirsty, crazed psychopaths. They will carpet bomb your country for ideological reasons alone. They weren't even getting resources out of Vietnam. They weren't even getting resources out of Laos and Cambodia. They were straight up carpet bombing these places because they were communist and for no other reason. And the idea that, well, Nixon showed up and then that created a peace thing, so now we can go about our business and be communists now. Yeah, right. Yeah, fucking right. Literally the next day. Literally the next day. We'll just put a line of destroyers right out here in the Yellow Sea, the East China Sea, the South China Sea. That's American seas right there. That there's American water. You send a boat in there, we blow it up. Oh, for fuck's sake. For fuck's sake, dude. That's the most annoying shit ever. What you've done there. For real. For real. For fucking real. Have a timeout. That's annoying, dude. That's shitty. That shows me that you're an unserious person who's not actually having a serious conversation. That you're not interested in having a serious conversation. Right? That shows me that you don't actually give a shit about the death of the Vietnamese, the Cambodians, the Laos, or the North Koreans, or the South Koreans, or the threat of terror that was existing in China. That's what shows me. That shows me that you're just a prick. That you're just some rich little kid who found a little daddy to be in love with, and that little daddy is Mao, and if somebody says something bad about Mao daddy, then I'm going to be a little prick about it. That's what that says to me. Because that's a really little prick thing to say. And if you're going to be a little prick in here, you're not going to last much longer. For fuck's sake. Just for fuck's sake. Jesus Christ, man. Just the dehumanization. Just disgusting. Just the dehumanization, man. Millions of people are dying, but, a technical snafu in the conversation. Oh, I get to capitalize and be a debate bro. Fuck you. Fuck you. That's so stupid. That's so fucking stupid. Just fucking dumbass shit right there. Holy fuck. Congratulations, you intentionally missed the point on purpose. Perfect illustration of intentional stupidity. Just the absolute perfect, could not be better. Just complete, total intentional stupidity. Get the fuck right out. I'm calling it.